Kicking off the list at number 10, making weapons. Now, of course, we see Tony Stark as the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, but how exactly did Tony end up with all that cash money? Well, in the MCU, it is shown that Tony is running his father's company, of course being Stark Industries. Founded in 1940 by, of course, Howard Stark, the company is the best at what it does, that being selling innovative weapons to the United States Armed Forces. Ooh, now after being kidnapped by the Ten Rings and seeing the damage that his weapons cause in an up-close and very personal way, he of course seized all manufacturing of the weapons division. But the damage is done. It is later revealed in Avengers Age of Ultron that one of his Stark Industries manufactured missiles killed Wanda and Pietro Maximoff's parents. Not cool, Stark, not cool. Number 9, Hulk's field trip. In the MCU, the Hulk leaves the Avengers and the planet for that matter. See, after tossing Ultron out of the Quinjet, the Hulk lets himself fly away on autopilot, perhaps feeling that he's done too much damage and that his presence is causing more chaos than comfort. Well, in the comics, that basically happens, but it's done with haste. And it's done by none other than our very own Iron Man. So the Incredible Hulk issue 92, titled Planet Hulk, starts off with Reed Richards and Tony Stark talking to a monitor, and that monitor is sending footage to the Hulk in the ship. They explain to the Hulk their trick, which was to send the Hulk away while he was already in space for a previous mission with Fury. They say they've picked his destination very carefully, which is this lush planet full of vegetation and game, no intelligent life forms. Sounds pretty easy breezy for a creature like that, only of course he ends up on Sakaar, which is not that planet. It's very different. He's actually forced to become a gladiator and fight for his life. Now, the Hulk is out of the picture, right? Mission accomplished, we did it. Pew, gone, get that guy out of here. Wrong. Sakaar ends up being destroyed and the Hulk, well, he's got some names to scratch off his get even list. So he heads back to Earth to find the Illuminati and seek revenge, including on Tony Stark. Number 8, he faked his own death. Iron Man issue 284 has quite an interesting cover. It shows Tony Stark wearing a suit, but like a boring kind of suit, in a casket. Ooh. And the text at the bottom of the page reads, "The death of Anthony Stark." It shows all these superheroes mourning the loss of their friend and fellow Avenger. Even Dr. Doom is like, ah yes, let us drink to the memory of a worthy opponent. Like, you know you're sick if Dr. Doom is like, yeah, cheers, I'll drink to you, that's cool. And to make things even crazier, he writes a note to Rhodey that says, "This keycard will give you full access to the entire complex. Take this CD-ROM disc to my office and play it on the AV system." Wow, nothing says futurist rich billionaire like, take this CD. It'll help you. Okay, you have to like wipe it off first. Put it in. So he puts it in and clicks play, and it is pretty awesome. It shows Stark explaining that somebody has to carry on for him. The world needs an Iron Man. And bam, you see a suit made just for Rhodey. What a moment. Tony continues to say that Iron Man was the greatest thing that he's ever invented, and he doesn't want it to die with him. Fair. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming for him though. I mean, all that responsibility of being the new Iron Man, plus mourning your best friend, plus figuring out how to run a company, that's a lot of So finally, he suits up and it's epic. Iron Man lives again, but it turns out Tony wasn't actually dead at all, rather just under cryogenic stasis until a scientist sorted out his spinal software problems. Ha! Got he! And number 7, he created Ultron. Ultron can't see the difference between saving the world and destroying it. Where do you think he gets that? That line is said by Wanda Maximoff in Avengers Age of Ultron. So Tony has created some amazing stuff. All of his suits, his innovative tech. Barf? Barf? That's the greatest thing. This dude knows what he's doing. But what if he created a supervillain? Ooh. So we find Tony and Bruce working on Ultron, right? Or just the idea at this point, rather. See, Tony had this idea since Avengers 1 that if he could create a suit of armor around the world, it would be a safer place, or rather create a robot that kicks ass, essentially. Something that just takes care of threats while the Avengers, I don't know, read a book, relax for once in their lives. Of course, one of the main elements helping them achieve this goal is the return of Loki's scepter. They think by studying the central power unit of the scepter, which ended up being the Mind Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones, they can finally solve this puzzle and be safe. Tony ends up accidentally infusing the consciousness from the Mind Stone into this evil, jealous killer bot that mirrors many aspects of Tony Stark. So Ultron immediately starts to learn about what he is and who the Avengers are, and with his brain being the super AI, he decides they've all just gotta go. And by the end of the movie, we have a horribly damaged Sokovia with roughly 177 deaths. One of those deaths being Charles Spencer, a young American engineer killed in the final fight. Charles's mother ends up confronting Stark in Captain America's Civil War, which ultimately leads to, drumroll, number 6, signing the Accords. Captain America Civil War was one of the most highly anticipated MCU movies, and it's pretty easy to figure out why. The two teams going against each other, I mean, even the poster, I was sold. The movie touches base on incidents like Charles Spencer. How many people have died because of the Avengers? I mean, sure, the whole fun is seeing somebody like Stark create this powerful villain and then use his own wit to defeat him with the help of the Avengers. But like, an asteroid basically hit Earth. I'm surprised more people didn't die in Sokovia, to be honest. So the government sees this and makes every superhero sign these accords, and Tony Stark is all on board. He wants this to happen. He's pushing it. That way the government can control what they do or where they go. So it's not their name that's on the line. And if you don't sign, you retire. That's the deal. Now, of course, some team members don't agree, like, Captain America, who's all about freedom. Tony basically forced team members to sign up and go against his very own coworker, Steve Rogers. It's wild because we see both these character arcs changed in this movie for the both of them. We see Cap at the start, who wants to be this like team player and do everything by the books, in Captain America, the first Avenger. And now, by his third movie, he's an outlaw because Tony Stark didn't listen to him about Bucky. Now, Stark, when we first met him, he was cocky, he was rich, he wanted to punch his way through all the problems, even spying on S.H.I.E.L.D. the second he entered the helicarrier. But now, Tony wants everybody to sign and work for the government, all because he feels bad about creating Ultron and blowing it out of the sky. If he had never signed and listened to Cap, the crazy plan of Zemos wouldn't have actually worked. The band would still be together, and when Thanos came to Earth, they all would have smoked him before he even got hands of all the Infinity Stones. Ha! Rant over. Number 5, hashtag engaged. Spider-Man Homecoming was released in 2017 and directed by John Watts. And it's amazing. I mean, this version of Spider-Man, this film version, this is Spider-Man. The older Tom Holland gets, the more and more this dude is gonna become Spider-Man. Like, he's gonna basically do what Robert Downey did with Iron Man. Like, it just works. This is it. We found the casting for this character. Done. Good luck to anybody else who wants to replace these guys. So one thing I hated about Spider-Man Homecoming was the very end of the movie. So Tony has this plan to introduce the world to Spider-Man, the newest Avenger, even showing him this fancy new Iron Spider suit as part of the pitch. Peter Parker, being all coy and smart, thinks that it's just a test and politely declines the offer. He says he would rather be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man just to chill out, So Tony reacts in a great way. He's all for it. He's like, yep, protect the little guys, I gotcha. And then after Peter walks away, we see Pepper Potts emerge from behind him, and in the background you can see all of these reporters and spectators. He really was planning on introducing a new Avenger. Also, after the events of Civil War, really? I always thought that was a weird time to be like, hey, remember on the news when this was a big deal? Well, here to introduce a high schooler with the ability to throw a bus, here's Spider-Man. He even comes with 4 metal arms and instant kill mode. Check it out. Not a great plan, no. So instead of introducing the new Avenger, he has to do something. I mean, those poor reporters, how are they ever gonna get over it? So he grabs an engagement ring and last second he proposes to Pepper Potts. Ah, damn. That's not a bad trick to have up your sleeve. Like, ah, damn, I forgot my school project. Maybe I'll just propose to somebody in class instead. That'll distract them. Number 4, address shoutout. If there's somebody that wants to kill you, odds are you're just gonna stay away from that person, right? Like, you don't just give your address out to the public, let alone, I don't know, a terrorist. So after Happy gets put in the hospital due to one of the Mandarin's attacks on the Chinese theater, Tony Stark decides he's got a few choice words for the man responsible, the Mandarin. Iron Man 3, of course, didn't go so well with fans, given that the villain was just a fake out, and a fake out that people were actually really looking forward to seeing. I mean, the Mandarin's one of the coolest villains ever, and instead we got not the Mandarin. We got like a guy who turns red. But in his message to the Mandarin after visiting Happy in the hospital, Tony says how he's not afraid of the Mandarin and he in fact should just die. pal. Do you ever argue with somebody and then you take it like a step too far and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that? So Tony gives his address to everybody filming. There's a news crew, there are people on their phones. Like, dude, I get you're upset, but come on, use your smart billionaire head. So of course he gets attacked by the Mandarin because he's the Mandarin, and that's what villains do. They attack your Malibu mansions. What did you expect? And out of all of the suits Tony has access to, I'm talking his suit in the final battle for Avengers, he has the briefcase suit, the suitcase suit where he's like, you know, out of all these things, no, this guy gears up with a prototype suit. And of course he gets wrecked. That attack sets up the entire film. Could have easily been avoided if you just didn't give your address out on the news. Silly man. And number 3, Superior Iron Man. So we go now to issue 1 of Superior Iron Man. The issue itself starts off mirroring the tech in Iron Man 3 in a way. Tony can control his suit and fight inside of it, but he's not actually in the suit. He's actually laying in a pool, sipping on margaritas. So his new Extremis armor was fascinating. So much so that Tony released it as like the smartphone app. Now this app allowed people to change their bodies using this virus, becoming however they wanted. And it was great, but then Tony does the ultimate power move and says that the app was actually just a free trial, and in order to continue using it, you have to pay 100 smackaroos a day. Honestly, that's not a bad deal. I would pay that to become Iron Man, definitely. I'd be broke. You know what I would do? I would actually pay for the app, and then use the suit to rob banks, and then use that money to pay for the app. I'm a villain. I guess I just realized I'm definitely a villain. Just said it out loud, there we go. Number 2, Bad Armor. In the Age of X limited series released back in 2011, we find Tony Stark in a rather odd predicament. See, at this point in the series, issue 2 I believe this happens, Tony is infected with this virus that is bonding him to his suit. You ever get like a piece of your sweater stuck to an arm hair and you're like, oh god, what's going on? And then you pull it and you're like, whew, that was close. It's kind of like that, except, you know, way worse. He's even going by the name Steel Corpse, which, I mean, as far as names go, it's pretty good. It's pretty fitting. Now, at this point, he was a mutant killer. It's a long story, but basically when Iron Man went to stop killing these mutants, in like the turning point of the comic, his suit, which was now literally part of him, started to control him against his will. And it's super scary how it looks on the page. Like, he looks so different and sick and gruesome. His body's not doing well at all handling the merge. So his armor starts to take aim at a group of mutants against his will, and he freaks out, begging Captain America to save them in a rather dark way, if you know what I'm saying. So Cap then takes out Iron Man with a shot to the head. Nice move. A little late, I would have done it sooner in this series, but definitely a good call. And finally for number 1, Demon in a Bottle. So the classic storyline that was actually the center of attention for Iron Man 2 back in 2010. So in this movie we find Tony Stark, and at this point the arc reactor in his chest was powered with a palladium core. So time plus usage of the Iron Man suit equals poison. Not great. So we see Tony's life being ran down to the ground. We see his mental health start to decline, and at Tony's party he's hammered, he's peeing in his suit, and then to see a drunk superhero like Tony Stark acting like that, it wasn't random. This idea didn't come out of nowhere. The idea was loosely based on the Demon in a Bottle storyline from the comics. See, this character arc begins with Iron Man issue 120. We see Tony just slamming drinks. The opening shot, we see like 3 mini bottles of gin, and then Tony orders more. And the flight attendant's like, hey, how about a magazine, because it's the middle of the day? And Tony responds with, nope, I'll do another martini. She even tries to cut him off. She tries to cut off Tony Stark. You know how fat that tip would have been? She says, sir, you've had like 3 already, are you sure? And he's like, yes ma'am, I am. Stating that he's drinking for 2, the other of course being his Iron Man persona. That's a lovely sign right there. What happens when you have a superhero who loves slamming martinis? Well, you get Tony flying through the air drunk, spreading toxic fumes all over a crowd. The drunk tank himself even cheated on his girlfriend Bethany. Not cool. The alcohol addiction was of course put to the side for the MCU storyline, thank God. Like, imagine if Tony tried to snap his fingers but he was too drunk. He's like, and I'm so hungry. Can we go home, please? Like, I gotta eat junior chickens right now.
Number 10 didn't have his priorities straight. I won't deny when I originally wanted to come back to the X-Men, I was more focused on running away. I was behaving recklessly as a result, and eventually it got so bad that the rest of the X-Men called me on it. Embarrassing. Storm ended up challenging me for leadership, and she kicked my butt too, unsurprisingly. I might be a great tactician and a master of trigonometry, but you know, these laser eyes that are really portals to another dimension filled with limitless energy, apparently, have nothing on what my teammate Aurora is capable of. And so I was unable to leave and forced to return to my family, with a lot of my fellow mutants judging me for trying to shirk my responsibilities to my wife and child. Number 9. Blasted Wolverine because he dropped a truth bomb. Some might see it that way anyways. I, however, feel like Logan was being very insensitive and disrespectful to Emma and I at the time. Wolverine basically saw Emma Frost and I together following one of Jean's many deaths and harshly judged me. What part of the mourning process is this, he asked us. First of all, he barged in on us, then he started accusing me of not mourning properly? Did I overreact by optic blasting him out of a window? Maybe. I don't know why Logan always has to goad me though. Why can't we just have a calm, reasonable discussion about our feelings? It's almost like he wants me to fight him. Number 8. Rick Grayson. In a weird way, Rick Grayson was kind of Batman's fault, although KG Beast was the one who shot Nightwing, resulting in the brain damage that would of course affect his memories and leave him as Rick Grayson. Just around the time we had only just got him back as Nightwing as well. It would later be revealed that this incident was actually part of a larger plot, a plot to break Batman concocted by Bane and in part Thomas Wayne Sr., aka Flashpoint Batman. This proves that just being close to Batman can lead to all sorts of messed up things happening, including you forgetting who you are and instead of getting to be a hero again, becoming a very lost man named Rick, and later a brainwashed pawn of Jokers known as Dickie Boy. Rick Grayson was not a great time for Nightwing in the comics, and it all pretty much happened just because he was close to Batman and could be used as a tool to hurt him. So basically just one of the worst things I guess Batman can even do to anyone is be like, hey, you're cool and I like you. If Batman likes you, that's not good. Probably. Villains will come for you.
Number 7. Broke Black Cat's nose and heart. Venom wanted everything to do with Spider-Man. He wanted to take away everything, starting of course with his love life. So in Amazing Spider-Man 3:16, he goes after another close acquaintance. This time it's Black Cat. We see her in a train of thought, wondering where Spider-Man had moved to. How peculiar indeed, I wonder. So she's come to realize that her and the Spider should be together, and then now Venom comes in just to ruin her entire day. Venom attacks and figures she must know where he is, although she legitimately doesn't. So before Venom heads out, he casually mentions that Parker's wife didn't know where he was either, adding insult to injury, literally. She got a broken nose, and then he's like, hey, by the way, he's married, so your night just went from good to the opposite. What a terrible night too. Imagine getting your nose broken and then someone's like, hey, by the way, she's married. Number 6. Leave a trail. When Eddie Brock was doing time at Rikers Island, his cellmate just happened to be Cletus Cassidy, who was in there for, let's just say, some horrible things. So when Venom came and reunited there with Eddie, part of the symbiote was left behind as they were breaking out, taking over Cletus Cassidy. This guy was horrible beforehand. I mean, he was in there because he took out tons of guys and he bragged about it the entire time. He's sick. So that plus the symbiote equals Carnage, making its first debut in Amazing Spider-Man 361, Carnage Part 1. He's one of the biggest, baddest villains in the comic, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing Woody Harrelson play him in the live-action Venom sequel. Now, while most of this can be pinned on Cletus being the main problem here, we have to add it to the list. Always make sure you don't leave any space goop behind, especially not in prison. Come on, Venom, who do you think's gonna grab it? Number 5. Ditch the gear. Sometimes when you don't need something anymore, you drop it like it's hot. Like that scene from Forrest Gump, where Forrest runs out of his leg braces. But now sometimes when you realize you don't need something and you get rid of it, sometimes you just happen to be Venom, and sometimes that thing you no longer need is Angelo Fortunato. So back in 2005, Marvel wanted to reboot Venom. So the new Venom host was Don Fortunato, after he won the symbiote in an auction. What a great win, by the way. I would definitely bet on that. He gave the suit to his son Angelo to make him more tough. Okay, sure, it works. Hey, trust me, man, it works. Eddie warned him about the risks, but Angelo didn't listen. Angelo attacked Spider-Man and ripped out his heart, only to discover that it was just an imposter. And then after a fight with Spider-Man, Angelo just left out of fear. He was getting his butt kicked, he wanted nothing to do with it. And Venom wasn't a fan of that, so he left the host mid-air. He just dropped him like a top. But his gear wasn't working properly after the fight Angelo had just caused, so how unfortunate is that? Number 4. Killed Uncle Ben. On Earth 2301, better known as Marvel's Mangaverse, we see Ben Parker part of the Spider Clan. He's skilled and ambitious, and he even plans to open his own martial arts school. How badass is that? So during this time, he was teaching a young Peter Parker the ways of the Spider Clan. When one day Peter was rushing to avoid being late to the dojo, he was surprised to see all the lights were off. Weird. I wonder if there's like a surprise party or something, or maybe Venom's here. Let's hope it's the first one. With his last words being, "With great power comes great responsibility," he died at the hands of Venom. There's a nice scene later on where the two talk again, and Uncle Ben gives the advice needed to Peter in this dreamlike sequence. It's beautiful. But the damage Venom did on this Earth was permanent. And sad too. Quite sad. Number 3. Lee Price. When Venom bonds to a host, depending on who that person is, things could be manageable. Like Eddie Brock, for example. Things are manageable. It's kind of workable. But sometimes they can be even worse than before. Like in the case of Lee Price. Lee had a pretty rough time growing up. He was bullied, and his father wasn't the best role model by any way, and he treated his mother in an awful way as well. Just not a great guy, not a great house. So in order to escape this horrid living situation, Lee thought it best to burn down the apartment, all while his parents were still in there. Like I said, not a nice guy. And to get away with it, he blamed it all on a mutant with pyrokinesis, who at the time was his friend. So Lee suppressed this for years, and he grew up actually believing that the boy had actually done this. And he also thought that his dad had abandoned him the whole time. That's how far his brain has gone believing this. Later in life, he spent 5 years as a ward of the state before joining the army, until an explosion resulted in the loss of a couple squad members and a couple of fingers. Already a tough life, now enter Venom. You know it's bad when even Venom is trying to unbond with you. That's how you know. Lee used the symbiote for awful things, so much so that Venom was actually relieved once Lee had left the picture. Number 2, Anne Weying. Anne first met Eddie Brock at Empire State University. She made her comic book debut back in Amazing Spider-Man issue 375. She reflects on how once upon a time her and Eddie were in love. That's right, he was smart, witty, with a boyish charm that swept her off her feet. So what happened? Well, while they were married, Eddie became a journalist for the Daily Globe, and she was a lawyer. So far sounds great. Sounds like a lovely household with people doing great work. After she divorced him, things only got worse for her. Like for example, I don't know, she was shot by the villain Sin Eater. Yeah. And then after that, Eddie figured it's a good idea to loan her some of the symbiote to heal her up. Now it worked, but the only downside is now we have a she-Venom for a bit. She ended up ending the lives of 2 men who attacked her, so once the symbiote was returned to Eddie, she had to live with all of those memories. Unlike Lee, who had time to kind of erase and forget and just trick his mind into believing he didn't do these horrible things. Anne had this for like a hot minute, and then it went away while she was an adult. She's like, I know what happened. And it doesn't work out well for her. She was traumatized until the end of her life. She couldn't even leave her own apartment. Even for such a short amount of time, Venom can cause quite stress levels. Number 1, planetary attack. In Venom Space Knight issue 8, the symbiote teaches Flash Thompson a lesson about its past. Back to where it all began. Back to where the first host was born. Yeah, so after the two had bonded, he went back to his homeworld and took out everybody. Now all that remains are just graves of the dead. Venom describes this first host as a cruel and twisted soul, one who showed Venom the cruelty and twistedness of his own soul. He killed everybody on this planet, so naturally I have to put him at number 1. Starting off at number 10, he destroyed Johannesburg. With many comic book stories to pick from, these events can get a little confusing. To start off the list, we go back now to the events of Avengers Age of Ultron, released back in 2015. Now, before Wanda Maximoff was an Avenger, she was getting some dirty work done to help Ultron. Okay, this included playing mind games with the Avengers. So Wanda gets to Banner and he hulks out big time. This time it's very uncontrollable. Now at this point in the MCU, the Hulk has a handle on his Hulk mode, kind of, like he's got it down. After Avengers 1, he was like, I'm always angry, and then he's like standing in the circle with them. He knows what he's doing to some degree, and with the help of Black Widow, she can tippity tap his palm and make him chill out. Black Widow was out of commish this time due to the same mind trick from Wanda, so he ends up going crazy in Johannesburg, and it takes Iron Man and his new Veronica #Hulkbuster armor to come in and knock some sense into him, literally. Now, of course, Wanda was in his head, but none of the other Avengers reacted this way. They just went to places in their mind that brought them a lot of distraught, and they couldn't even fight anymore. They were leveled. So, the Hulk made matters worse, of course, resorting to punching and being, well, a monster. Number 9. He broke Las Vegas. The Hulk was assisting S.H.I.E.L.D. on a mission to clear out some Hydra weapons in the Vegas desert, and after a gamma bomb blew up in his face, he becomes this dark, menacing gray Hulk and begins to terrorize Vegas. The Fantastic Four's Thing comes to help, telling Johnny Storm that monsters understand monsters. Pretty valid point. So Ben goes up to Banner and lays it down. He explains that he knows he doesn't want to hurt anybody else and that he's just messed up, that's all. He continues to offer to help Banner, treatment for the radiation gamma even. And then Hulk responds with, "She's dead. Betty Banner is dead and you can't do anything about it. You killed her." And then, bah, he goes crazy. So the people in Vegas see this monster battle happening on the news and they love it? Yeah, they start placing bets. Some guy's like, $50 on the Hulk. Another guy's like, $50,000 on the Hulk. It's wild. Check out Fantastic Four issue 533 for yourself to see how the Green Giant got through that. Number 8, he left the Avengers. Okay, again, we go back to Age of Ultron. So after the final battle on Sokovia, the Hulk decides to just leave. He hops in the Quinjet after tossing Ultron out and decides to just let it keep flying. He ended up going pretty far considering we don't see him at all during the Civil War storyline. It's not until Thor Ragnarok that we meet Banner again, and he has no idea where he is or how long he's been there. Without the help of Black Widow, he can't transform back into his regular, nice Banner body. I have to include this because this is a decision the Hulk made, not Banner. There's a difference. He himself decided that he was just gonna go. Maybe he was done with hurting people. It's actually a massive character arc that people didn't really look into enough. Like everybody came out of the theater like, whoa, Vision and Wanda, can't believe it. Scepter was actually no way, dude. Hey guys, where's the Hulk? Where did he go? That's the Hulk. Of course he came to the aid in Thor Ragnarok, but maybe if he hadn't gone at all, he wouldn't have fought Thanos when he did, huh? Therefore not losing and becoming unable to get mean and green come Infinity War when you really needed a Hulk. He could have figured it out on Earth. I mean, he figures out the perfect balance by Endgame, so I feel like if he just stuck around, he would have gotten to that point faster. Also, don't leave the Avengers, man. You need the science bros, always. Number 7. Madison Square Up Garden. This next one is pretty wild. So Thor Ragnarok was loosely based off of the Planet Hulk storyline. I say loosely because that story didn't end up going so well. Like the comic book story didn't end well. So on Sakaar, the rocket that he arrived in ended up blowing to smithereens, causing some casualties that left Hulk a little distraught. So what did he do? He heads back to Earth, pissed, and thus begins the World War Hulk storyline. He just murks everybody, all the heroes that Earth has come to love, just in the path of this very angry beast. It's not a good situation. He locks the Illuminati in Madison Square Garden and then makes them fight to the death. I mean, once you spend enough time on Sakaar, I guess it becomes second nature to just battle it out. In the first issue of this series, you see Iron Man in his Hulkbuster armor, and he uses repulsors to accelerate his punch, which is something Iron Man can be seen doing in the MCU. I like when they keep small details like that make these series memorable and awesome, especially the artwork. It looks really cool, and then they insert those into the MCU version of that story. See, even Hulk's design on Sakaar, they really wanted to treat the audience with the same elements that we loved already from the comic book. So make sure if you haven't already to grab all 5 issues of the 2007 World War Hulk storyline, because it's actually a treat and you can plow through it in like a day. Number 6, Old Man Logan. Now, we were all delighted to see an R-rated Wolverine story finally on the big screen with the release of Logan back in 2017. This was loosely based on the story Old Man Logan, written by Mark Millar and Steve McNiven. The film had Logan in the spotlight alongside Charles Xavier and Caliban, and is one of my favorite movies ever. Not even superhero movies, like just as a movie in general. Hugh Jackman is chef's kiss, so good. But in the comics, the story has moments that are even darker than what we saw, believe it or not. Like how about a Hulk gang, for starters? That's right, so in this storyline we find the Hulk as one of the few remaining superheroes on Earth. Now at this point, Banner had decided to breed with somebody like him. Maybe just a little bit too much like him. Like, I don't know, say, his cousin? Yeah, his cousin. So him and Jennifer Walters had an offspring and referred to them all as Hulk Gang, which is a sick nickname for your little ones. Now, if you think that's already twisted and wild, the Hulk gang actually killed Logan's family. Why? Well, they were bored, of course. What else do you do when you're bored? Do you watch these videos or do you just murder Wolverine's family? Today you did the right choice. So Wolverine went to exchange a few words with the man, of course, and Hulk ended up swallowing Wolverine whole. What a jerk. Don't worry though, Wolverine used his claws to get out in a rather messy way, killing Papa Banner in the process. Number 5, Statue of Liability. We go now to the Incredible Hulk issue 299. So after the Avengers and everybody decided, hey, the Hulk can finally control himself, let's all be nice, let's give him a statue, reward the man. He earned it. Earth's mightiest hero. We love this guy. Yeah, he's on lunchboxes. So nice. Then in comes the villain Nightmare to ruin the day for the rest of us. So he taps into Banner's subconscious and makes him resort back to the monstrous, uncontrollable ways that he used to be. Again, kind of like when Wanda was messing with his brain in Age of Ultron. So he grabs the statue that was made for him and then just hucks it at Thor. That's hilarious. Like, hey, happy birthday, thanks. Ugh. The Hulk even beats up Banner's girlfriend named Kate Waynesboro, not to be confused with the Wayans brothers. So next time you give your friend with anger problems a statue, just make sure they can't throw it at you. And number 4, train problems. Have you ever been commuting to work and you think, oh, what's taking so damn long? Why isn't this train going anywhere? Well, in a world where these beasts exist in real life, the usual traffic jam would have most civilians' palms sweating. Like if the Avengers were real today, like in our world, I'd be afraid all the time. So many villains, so many problems all the time. Like if I heard a balloon pop in the other room, I'd be like, is it Loki? Are we good? Am I dust? What's going on? Is it happening again, please? So in the Incredible Hulk 122, Hulk has a moment where he kind of ruins an entire locomotive, yeah. He was annoyed by the sound of a passing train and does his version of a rope workout, you know, when those like guys get in the thing and they flick it? He does that, but with a train track. Causes all the cars to fly in the air, like that tablecloth trick, except when your like nephew does it and he doesn't know how to do it yet, so they all just fly off. No passengers were on the train, sure, but I mean, making it rain sidecars, I'm sure that's not the easiest thing to clean up. Number 3, Joe Not Fix-It. The Grey Hulk, aka Joe Fix-It, is one of my favorite versions of the Hulk. He's like this bouncer in Vegas, and he reminds me of a security guard that I actually used to work with in a bar. His name's Tony. He was awesome. He was like this big, old guy. He's amazing. So naturally, I like this Hulk a lot. The next point made me like him even more. He's a savage. A savage! So he sees his ex-girlfriend, Marlo Chandler, being attacked by a werewolf. So what does this giant, unstoppable monster do upon seeing this? He just stares and considers letting her get mauled. I mean, maybe he's jealous, maybe he's a little bit, I don't know. But I mean, Joe Fix-It is this tough, I don't give a shit kind of guy. I mean, come on, this is a pretty dark character arc. A little bit too much, Mr. Joe Fix-It. And number 2, Killed Tigra. Okay, yeah, this one goes pretty dark. We go now to the 1995 comic titled The Last Avengers Story. Now at this point, most of our loved heroes have gotten old and retired. Either that or they've died in battle. Not much is happening in terms of super support. So in the first issue, we find the Hulk in, of course, a fit of rage. Classic. And at one point, he gets his green mitts on Tigra and, oh baby, that's a position you don't want to be involved in. Tigra jumps in like, yeah, we're a team, haha, the Hulk, I can just claw his eyes out as easily as anybody else. And then Banner grabs her and says, hey, make a wish, and pulls her apart. Like one of those holiday finger popper snapper things where you go, yikes, make a wish. Who says that? This guy's messed. And finally, number 1, Hungry Hungry Hulk. To end this list, I thought it was fair to pick the 2002 to 2004 run of The Ultimates, where Hulk is, of course, a cannibal. Mark Miller and Brian Hitch wrote this thing so well that I actually want to see this version on screen more than like any of the latter. So after becoming the Grey Hulk, he ended up eating a bunch of people. He even encounters Iron Man and says the line, little man smells like canned meat. Hulk wanted to know if he tastes like canned meat too. Like, if he said that to me, I would my super suit. I would be like, no, I'm not dealing with this guy, you guys do it. Like imagine if he said this in the movies, the entire theater would just sit up like, is he about to eat Tony Stank? So since the Grey Hulk incident, he's been locked up, rightfully so, but after Magneto attacks the Ultimates base, they lose power for a little. So during that time, Hulk decides the 6 nursing staff members near him served as a tasty treat, and down the hatch they went. Yum yum.
Number 10. Rune's Xmas. Likely for a lifetime for one unfortunate child, Punisher is disguised as Santa and posing as a man looking to raise funds for charity. When he asks the passing Napolitano family to help the poor, they refuse. He reveals himself and then guns them down, right in front of a child. Horrified, the child asks why, and Frank answers they were naughty. Wow. Well, that kid will fortunately never misbehave again, but it will probably also take years of therapy to undo the damage that the Punisher also just did to his mental health. He's gonna be terrified of Santa for forever. Number 9. murders litterbugs. Although this story was later retconned somewhat in an effort to explain away the Punisher's intense and erratic behavior here, when it was first released, this behavior was considered canon. Punisher had recently returned to the streets, condemning them and their inhabitants as being worse than ever. He was out to punish those who caused any harm to others or society in general, which meant zero tolerance for litterbugs. At one point, we watch as he guns down a couple in the rain who discard a soggy newspaper onto the ground they've been using as a makeshift umbrella. Aren't newspapers compostable, Frank? I mean, I guess they take a long time to decompose, so it's still not amazing for the environment, but still. Professing in his internal monologue that littering is a crime, the Punisher fires at the couple, and we see at least one of them topple over in the corner of a panel. Their fate isn't confirmed, but it's definitely heavily implied here that he just killed them for littering.
Number 8. She led the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Switching realities for a moment to the reality of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe. On this Earth, just like on the 616 Earth, Wanda and her brother Quicksilver were part of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But with the apparent departure of Magneto from his mortal coil, Wanda took leadership of the villainous group of mutants and gave them a bit of a rebranding. She wasn't all bad here, as she did keep in contact and sometimes work with Charles Xavier, whose opinions she respected while still believing that mutants were the superior species. Although a great leader, she still met her demise when a version of Ultron would fall in love with her, realize they could never be together, and then use a special bullet to take her out. Yeesh.
Number 7. Letting them fight it all. One of the worst things he ever did to Robin, Stephanie Brown, was probably to have ever let her fight at all, especially as this was considered such a controversial topic by Batman's friend at the time, Dr. Leslie Tompkins. In the story War Game, Stephanie Brown attempts to win Batman's favor back after being fired by him by putting a plan in motion to give Batman control over all the rival gangs of Gotham. Unfortunately, this doesn't work out, because she's missing crucial information involving the real identity of Matches Malone. Spoiler, Matches Malone is Batman. And Stephanie ends up being captured and tormented by Black Mask. In the end, she succumbs to her injuries, but it was later revealed that this was because Tompkins, who recovered Stephanie, allowed her to die, all to prove a point to Batman about raising kids to become vigilantes. This would later be retconned so that, in truth, Dr. Tompkins had actually faked Brown's death to prove a point, but took her with her afterwards when she fled, not actually allowing her to die. I mean, I agree with that retcon because I feel like otherwise, wow, you made Leslie seem like really terrible. And yeah, that would be awful. Still though, if Batman had never had Robins to begin with, Stephanie would have never joined him, been fired, and then ended up almost dying after falling into the dangerous, sadistic hands of Black Mask. All in all, a lot of grief could have been avoided if Batman just didn't have Robins. Number 6. A Batcave bedroom. In Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin, the list of injustices committed against poor Robin, Dick Grayson, are very long. Included in this long list is the time that Bruce made Robin sleep in the Batcave. Literally, Bruce Wayne is a super rich millionaire type who has a giant house and could have let Robin sleep anywhere else. But here, Batman is trying to, I don't really know, is teach Robin a lesson? Torment him into submission? I'm not really sure of the motivation, but either way, he feels it's better if Robin is forced to sleep in the Batcave to learn probably some kind of lesson. The Batcave is a literal cave, by the way, so it's drafty and completely unsuited for sleep when it comes to comfort levels. I feel like it might be time to call child services on Batman. Someone, get Robin help. Number 5. Rats for dinner. As if the previous point wasn't enough, Bruce not only deprived Robin of a warm, dry, and draft-free place to sleep, but he also deprived him of a rat-free place to sleep. The Batcave you see is filled with rodents, apparently, and when young Dick Grayson asked Batman and Alfred about dinner, he was refused any food from the household and instead told that he should catch his own supper, forcing him to dine on rats. What is happening? All-Star Batman was really brutal, not just to people he didn't like, but even to those he supposedly did like, such as Robin. Although I think maybe Batman needed to turn Robin into like a big jerky jerk like him in this universe before he would fully like him, because this Batman was definitely a jerky jerk. So maybe that's what was up with all the making him sleep in the Batcave and eat rats and stuff. Number 4. Slept with Batgirl. Although honestly, I wish I could count this for Babs too, but she's never been a Robin, so although it feels like there is some injustice that was done to her here as well, we're just gonna focus on the pain that these two caused Dick Grayson, Nightwing, who is basically Batman's surrogate son in almost every reality. and probably one of the most famous Robins. This one comes from the Batman Beyond continuity and apparently happened when Dick Grayson was out of town. Not only is this messed up because, well, I mean, Babs was Dick's girlfriend, akin to a daughter-in-law to Bruce, but he also ended up getting her pregnant. The affair between Bruce and Babs ruined Nightwing and Batgirl's relationship, obviously, and afterwards Bruce didn't even stay with Barbara as the two broke up after she lost the baby. Major yikes alert. Number 3. Unable to save Robin. In this case, Batman was unable to save Robin this time around in the Batman Beyond universe when he was kidnapped by the Joker and Harley Quinn. For this one, we're talking about Tim Drake Robin. Tim Drake was out on patrol on his own. He ended up kidnapped and hidden in Arkham Asylum for 3 weeks, with Batman unable to find him while he was tormented and brainwashed by the Joker and Harley into becoming Joker Jr., and also was coerced into revealing secret intel about Batman as well. This whole thing, it was pretty awful, and although Batman can't be held responsible for Joker and Harley's actions here, it is pretty strange that Robin managed to stay missing for 3 weeks, and also that he remained hidden away in such an obvious place as Arkham Asylum. I thought Batman was supposed to be one of the world's greatest detectives. The pain didn't end there for Tim either. No one would happen to catch a sneaky microchip that was implanted in Tim, which years later would actually cause him to regress, with Joker's personality gradually taking him over again. Fortunately, Terry McGinnis' Batman at that point was there to save the day and managed to destroy the chip, freeing Tim for good. But that wasn't Bruce Wayne Batman, that was Terry McGinnis Batman, so just saying. Number 2. Dead. Probably one of the worst things even in Batman's mind that he has ever done to any of his Robins is when he let Jason Todd die. Well, I mean, he didn't let him die. He wasn't just like standing there and he was like, yeah, I'm just gonna look the other way for this one. He did try to save him, but unfortunately he made it too late. This also would create a major shift for Jason, who would return many years later alive once more, feeling as though not only did Batman fail to save him, but he also failed him in the sense of abandoning him, as Jason did manage to survive. Now granted, Batman and the rest of the Bat family, they never knew about that. So although Jason still holds this grudge somewhat even today, it feels like he's expecting a lot from Bruce and company. Cause like, they would have been there for you, Jason, if they knew. However, if you ask Batman, not being able to save Jason Todd would probably be pretty high up on his own list of worst things he has ever done to a Robin. Number 1. Killed almost all of them. Despite it being in the name, it's sometimes easy to forget that the Batman who laughs was also once very much Bruce Wayne and the vigilante hero known as Batman. However, after being exposed to some very noxious Joker venom stored in Joker's spine and last breath, as Batman snapped his neck, killing him, Batman began to change. He became more and more paranoid and villainous, becoming ultimately an insane, almost hybrid version of hero and villain. Part Batman, part Joker when it came to his psyche. This prompted Batman to summon all of his Bat family members, but rather than ask them for help, he killed them all. Well, all of them except the Robin who was also his son Damian Wayne, who he instead offered a place at his side. Damian accepted and was spared, but every other Robin was pretty much murdered by the Bat himself, at least in this dark multiverse reality.
Kicking off the list at number 10. She killed Maxwell Lord. Okay, it's one thing to kill an enemy, but to do it in front of thousands of people? I mean, do you have to? Wonder Woman issue 219 showed us a side to Wonder Woman that unfortunately had to come out. This issue was awesome. She handled Lord Maxwell and she wasn't playing around. Now at the time, Superman was a little off, and by off I mean under control by Maxwell himself. So he was a threat, and the two of them going at it was already intense enough. Something you don't want to see. Like Diana is pulling out some boss moves. At one point she says that every single strength can be turned into a weakness, and when he stops speaking, that's when I know he's using his ears. God forgive me, followed by a mighty huh, and just rocks his eardrums. Then she tries to shake Maxwell down using the lasso of truth, demanding to set Superman free from his grasp. He says, "Kill me," and she responds not with words, but with actions instead. And even Superman's like, whoa. And before we head over to number 9, guys, we have a huge announcement. We have another channel coming back after 3 years of running the show here. Landon himself is coming back with Landon Productions, and his first video is set to premiere December 7th. It's coming up, so go turn on your notifications on that channel as well, because you don't want to miss it. I've seen and heard what he's working on, and it sounds like a great time.
Is the Canada Goose gonna take it on? I'm gonna top like I'm goddamn Mario, right? I'm just
Not today! Maybe tomorrow!
Okay, is this real life right now?
Number 9, super intimate. Guys, superheroes have emotions just like us, okay? They meet other supers, they fall in love, they have super babies, they have lives too, it's fair. Sometimes key intimate moments are hard to conceal when you have the power of a god. So after the triumph that is The Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller decided to dive into a scene that we could have all gone without, involving her and Superman. So her and Superman get it on. In a fancy super hotel, maybe the Fortress of Solitude? No, God no. They get it on in the sky, you know, causing massive tidal waves, volcanoes are shooting off, they even moved the earth a bit. Man, even people are evacuating islands. Like, this is a bad day for everybody but Wonder Woman, of course. Next time you guys want to get it on for a 5-panel straight, I don't know, maybe Egypt. Someplace with a lot of sand and openness. Don't be blasting rocks at innocents. It's not nice. Number 8, Wonder Woman causing volcanoes to explode. I mean, that's pretty epic, but what about that time she made Captain Atom explode? If you drop a can of soda on the ground, it's ready to blow. You don't want to touch it. The last thing you want to do is puncture that can, or else you're gonna be sticky, and you're covered in bees. No one wants bees. In the Injustice storyline, we find Wonder Woman making a not so smart choice when it comes to handling Captain Atom. So he's about to rock Superman, right? And then Wonder Woman comes in and cuts his throat open with her sword. "Oh, you stupid," he says to Diana. "I have more power in me than 10 nuclear bombs, and you and your stupid magic sword have just breached the thing that contains it." But then he decides, this is my last opportunity anyway, screw it. Grabs Superman and then takes Superman out to get an up close and personal look at the light show. Nice. Number 7, no rules. Captain America 332, the villain Warhead drops in via parachute with a message. "Make war some more." Signed, Warhead. You know, in case we confused him with somebody else falling from the skies. He set up a table on top of the Washington Monument, and then he pulled out a nuclear device. So it's not looking like a good situation at all. Perfect time for a hero like Super Patriot. Yeah, he came in and used his powers and saved the day, proving that he can indeed be worthy of the hero life. Well, he tried to, but it didn't go as well as he planned. He climbed up the side, up to Warhead and his well-balanced table, and then he started hucking throwing stars at him at first. He hit him in the face a couple times. And then when that didn't work and he was close enough, he just grabbed the table and threw it into a diving board of doom and just hucked this guy right off into the skies. And he did not survive the fall at all. I mean, you could have handled this in literally any other way. You have superpowers. Come on, use your head. Number 6, became Captain America. One of the biggest game changers in the MCU was when John Walker came out at the end of the episode, winked at the camera, and then showed us his brand new Captain America suit in the meantime. This happened, of course, in the comics as well, when Steve Rogers had to abandon his identity due to the Red Skull's manipulation of the Commission on Superhuman Activities. So now somebody has to suit up, somebody has to take his spot. The government needed a new figure. So in issue 333 of Captain America, it was titled The Replacement. The government's weighing their options on who should be the next to lead the nation, so they go with the guy who just launched a dude off of a building. Awesome, John Walker just got the promotion of a lifetime. And now we're all screwed. Number 5, Buck upgrade. So now he's got a brand new suit, he's got the best frisbee of all time, but what else does John Walker need? Well, how about some backup for starters? He brings back the bold urban commandos who I mentioned earlier. The Buckies, as they're referred to, wore Captain America masks, boots, pants, but they were topless for some reason. I don't know, maybe they were into wrestling growing up. John's right-hand man, Lamar Hoskins, has been by John's side since the military, so he was obviously asked to be the main sidekick, who we also got to meet in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And he stood tall on the front cover of Captain America issue 334, and now he goes by the name Battlestar. The other two guys also got a cool upgrade. Now they're referred to as left and right winger. They were cool until they revealed John's identity to the public, and then they were kind of not cool. Left winger and right winger tried to use John's old Super Patriot tech against him, but they were eventually beaten down and arrested. So now with his identity out and about, it was only time for John to take on another super alias. This time, number 4, becoming US agent. He's back again. One of his more stylish looks, if you ask me, but John Walker returns, this time with a blacked out Captain America suit, and the shield is also less spangly. He comes back and he's put to the test. He's forced to battle an Ironmonger, and when he goes to take it down alone, the shield actually seems to work out pretty well for him. Because in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who trained him how to use that shield in the first place. And judging by the trailers for Black Widow, because we still have to watch those until it's released, it looks like Taskmaster can throw a frisbee quite well. Number 3. He joined the Avengers. In West Coast Avengers issue 45, when Hawkeye sets up a team, well, on the West Coast, the government wanted an official in there to make sure all was going well. So funny enough, at this time in the comics, Vision was also trying to get government clearance again, so they sent in US agent. This led to John rescuing his former partner, Battlestar, from the power broker, so now this guy has his buddy back, and he's part of the Avengers. That's a pretty risky spot to put John Walker. I hope we never see him join the Avengers on the big screen, but seeing White Vision in the mix now kinda makes me nervous. Maybe the West Coast Avengers will happen, maybe, just maybe. Number 2, he joined the Force Works. After the West Coast Avengers fell apart, because naturally that's what happens when John Walker is part of the team, the costume and the shield were tossed to the side. So Tony Stark put together an all-new team known as Force Works. Scarlet Witch talked John Walker into joining the team because she honestly believed that John was the backbone to the entire squad. She kind of liked how he would run things. So he planned on running the team on tight military lines and the values of strength and dedication. So John joined the team and he wore a fancy new suit with an upgraded shield. This time it was an energy shield. John remained a member and went against the Kree, the Scatter, and the Mandarin. He was doing an alright job until he reverted back to his old ways. One mission had Force Works team up with the Avengers, and that wasn't a pleasant reunion. John Walker went into conflict with War Machine and Hawkeye, so he had to quit the Force Works as well. God, you can't put this guy anywhere. And last but not least, number 1, he took the serum. In the emotional ending of episode 4 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we find out what John Walker did to the remaining vial of the Super Soldier serum. He took it. Yeah. Zemo broke most of them except for one. John talked it over with Lamar Hoskins about if he would take the serum if presented the opportunity. So when Walker he does in fact take it, and it's shown to us in a pretty brutal way. While looking for Lamar, Walker reunited with Sam, and then they were all ambushed by the Flag Smashers, Nico and Dovik included. Now, Nico held back Walker for a moment, just long enough that Carly Morgenthau would attack Walker. Now, luckily, Lamar got in the way, and then that's when Carly accidentally delivered a fatal blow to Lamar. And this caused John Walker to lash out, and it's pretty bad. He can't control himself at this point. The serum has made him powerful and even more insane. And when he's attacking Nico in the heat of the moment, he goes a little bit too far. Poor Nico. This was the same episode where he told Carly that he was actually a Captain America fan growing up, so double oop.
Number 10 took his own life. Right in front of Robin, no less. Of course, this was all part of a plot to get into the exclusive Death Cheaters Club, but he still made Robin take part in this wacky scheme. Not only did Robin have to stand by and witness Bruce drink a poisonous concoction so that he might momentarily die, but he also was involved in that scheme. It was Robin's role to go and retrieve the doctor, who was at Wayne Manor to visit the elderly butler, Alfred. Dick had to pretend this all happened randomly, by the way, and wasn't planned at all. While the doctor attempted to revive Bruce, he began to worry with every passing second if Bruce would manage to recover, and how awful Dick would feel if Bruce died. He was like, this is terrible, what if it doesn't work out? Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that you feel that way. I feel like this is not an activity that your kid's sidekick should be involved in. You shouldn't just be like, I'm just gonna take my own life and put myself in this place, but don't worry, it'll all work out, and just be here and make sure it works out. That's a lot of pressure. I'm like 11, Batman. Number 9 made Robin dig his own grave. This actually happened to Dick Grayson's Robin in the comic World's Finest in issue 197. One of those stories where the plot is all based around one shocking, comic-selling, cover-featured moment. In this case, the moment was getting Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen and Robin to dig their own graves, while Superman and Batman stand over watching them, threatening to kill them once they're finished. Oh my goodness. How could this happen? Well, I mean, Batman was going to do the killing here anyways, because Superman has a very strict moral code that he simply cannot break. But I know, you're probably wondering, how did this happen? It's so crazy. Look at this cover. Well, this seems awful because, like I said, shock factor. In reality, this all came about as a misunderstanding. Batman had bumped his head and believed that he was mafia crime boss Lucas. I think I'm saying that right. Lucas. However, once his memories were recovered, it was too late. Superman was forced to seemingly kill Jimmy and Superman using his heat vision at the behest of the real Lucas, who appeared on scene. But don't fret though, this was all a clever ruse created by Superman to help them all escape safely, as well as apprehend the criminal. The overall plan also involved wax figures and a little piece of mint candy, because classic comics. I was wondering that when I saw when I saw Jimmy and Robin get melted, that's what I was wondering. I was like, wait a minute, They melted like pretty intensely, like a candle. They must be wax figures. Also, I love that that can all happen in front of like a bunch of people and everyone's like, yeah, that looks legit. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about some more dastardly deeds that Batman has done to Robin, trust me, there are lots more because classic comics and everyone was terrible back then. So be sure to let us know that you love this list by giving it a thumbs up, and maybe I'll have some more terrible things that Batman did to Robin to tell you about.
Number 8. Allowed a kidnapping. In Amazing Spider-Man number 112, we see Spider-Man really worried about Aunt May. She's gone missing after Gwen Stacy gave her a hard time for meddling in Peter's life too much, and he spent most of the previous issue searching for Aunt May. In this issue, we see Spidey has become so distracted, he doesn't even notice this guy getting kidnapped nearby. What's worse, when Pete does notice this guy, who also notices him, he starts the classic Spidey monologue about how helping this poor slob will take hours. Hours he could spend searching for Aunt May. He actually leaves the guy to get kidnapped, saying, maybe someday I'll have the courage to face myself again. Damn, Pete, you could have easily stopped and saved this guy. If that wasn't bad enough, later on it turns out that Aunt May wasn't even missing, she just had a new job. Way to go, Spidey.
Number 7. Tower of Babel. JLA Tower of Babel is a Justice League storyline, and one of the best storylines in my humble opinion. Written by Mark Waid and illustrations by Howard Porter, Batman is the greatest detective alive. Odds are, if you're ever in a room with Batman, he's already thought out your every move and he's planned his accordingly. He's always 2 steps ahead. That's what makes him the best. He also just happens to be the sole reason that everything goes in this storyline. He doesn't mean to, but it happens. So Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins launched this huge simultaneous attack on every member of the Justice League of America. Now the attacks are so specific, they're aware of the weakness of each League member. Now Batman was once worried that one or all of them could go rogue at any point, so he had contingency plans in order to take them out if that day ever came. So Talia al Ghul broke into the Batcave and stole those files. So if you want to take down some bad guys, here's exactly how to do it. Thanks, Batman. The best files ever. Now we have all the deepest, darkest secrets. Cool. So Plastic Man gets frozen and then shattered. A specifically designed Vibra bullet hits the Flash in the neck and causes him to have seizures at light speed, which sounds like an absolute nightmare. And Superman gets exposed to red kryptonite, and sadly, many more get hit too. Number 6. Batman ignores Blue Beetle. So back in Countdown to Infinite Crisis, Blue Beetle had actually approached his super friends and teammates after he had discovered something called the OMAC Project. So he brought it to Batman's attention, but Bruce just doesn't really give a damn at this point. He brushes him off almost immediately. Well, the OMAC Project of course turned out to be something, and when Blue Beetle discovered it, he's all by himself and he doesn't live to tell the tale. If only Batman just took him seriously in this moment, things would have turned out a lot less ugly for him. I mean, I know Batman created this thing in the first place, so it's kind of fair that he didn't listen to him, but like before Infinite Crisis, the OMACs killed a lot of people. Shouldn't have just given him like 2 minutes to maybe explain. And the fact that Batman didn't just listen to his team member, especially when he already knew something was kind of going on, sounds like it's all on you, Batman. I don't want to be the guy to say it, but I was just the guy to say it. Number 5. Wonder Woman hunts the Huntress. The Injustice universe shows us a different side to our team members, sometimes a little darker than we're ready for. So in issue 21 of Injustice Gods Among Us Year 3, we find our main supers in a world that's not so bright. And when it comes to issue 21 of Injustice Year 3, DC shows us yet again how great Wonder Woman is at cracking that lasso of truth. It's just a matter of where she cracked it, that was the problem. Well, she wraps it around the neck of the Huntress, and the crack that we hear is exactly what you think. Bam. So Batgirl calls her out for being a murderer, even though she really didn't mean to do it. Accidents happen, especially in the middle of a battle, you know, it happens. I mean, the tension was high. The Huntress was punching through shields. Wonder Woman just reacted in a violent way. It happens, you're a superhero. I remember one time I wrist shot an orange hockey ball through a garage door thing. It's like, you know what? When you're in the middle of it, accidents happen, you get crazy. Number 4, get a room. Look guys, superheroes have emotions just like us, okay? They meet other superheroes and they take down bad guys together. They hook up in the sky in the owl ship above the rest of the world. They're just like us, okay? Sometimes key intimate moments are hard to conceal when you have the powers of a god, right? Specifically Wonder Woman and Superman. So after the triumph that is The Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller decided to dive into an intimate moment with those two. So Wonder Woman and Superman embrace in each other, but where does this happen? In a fancy hotel? Fortress of Solitude? No and no. They get it on up there in the sky, of course, where everyone can see and hear. So they're superheroes, so this caused massive tidal waves. Volcanoes are blasting off, people are even evacuating islands. Like, this is a bad day. I mean, bad day for everybody but Superman and Wonder Woman. They look like they had a great time. Number 3, Superman moves Atlantis. Injustice Gods Among Us issue 12 is the final issue of the first Injustice comic series written by Tom Taylor, and we see Aquaman just unleash the ultimate pain. He's not having an easy go this time. He's unleashing armies on coastal cities. He's trying to show Superman that he has the power as well, and that he's not going to allow Atlantis to be taken over. So Superman is like, okay, you think you're the tough dude? No problem. Let me step in. Superman sees this as a threat, and even Batman's like, great, this is exactly what I thought was gonna happen between these two. So Superman doesn't just fly in, fight Aquaman one-on-one, and then settle their differences with this whole ordeal. No, instead Arthur gets the help of Wonder Woman and Green Lantern, and they literally move Atlantis. They move Atlantis like it's new furniture.
Pivot! Pivot!
They move it to the Sahara Desert, the place with the least amount of water possible. Not cool, guys, not cool. Number 2, Superman outs Batman. So in the climax of Batman vs Superman, we see Bruce Wayne straight up try and take out the Man of Steel. It's intense, and it ends with Superman not surviving in a way, but until he comes back in the Justice League movie. Spoilers. So if you're feeling a little upset about that, this next one should turn the tables in your mind. Superman once outed Batman, and he did it in a pretty hilarious way. Through social media, of course. Did he make a TikTok? No. Was it through Ask FM? No and no. It was in the pages of Injustice Gods Among Us issue 10. I mentioned this comic earlier because it has our super friends going against each other, but Superman takes it up to the next level when he posts Batman's true identity online. His tweet was quite simple and to the point. Batman is Bruce Wayne. 1.5 million retweets, not too shabby at all. Batman's trending on Twitter in real life almost like once a week, so I'm just waiting for the day when I look and I'm like, yes, Batman is real. And he's Paul Giamatti, get out of here, I knew it. Number 1, Justice Lords. The DCAU introduced us to the Justice Lords back in November 2003 in an episode titled A Better World. Was it a better world? No, definitely not. They were a multiversal counterpart of the Justice League. This is an alternate universe now, one where Lex Luthor is the current president of the United States. The Justice Lords were assembled to protect humanity from itself, which just sounds like bad news. That sounds like a bad story in the making. So yeah, they were robot replicas of Superman, and the inmates of Arkham Asylum were brainwashed and lobotomized. Just not an ideal world at all, definitely not a better one. And then when the Justice Lords of this universe found out they weren't alone, they tried to bring their ways of heroics over to our world. But our good Justice League took them down with the help of our Lex Luthor, who used a power disruptor to neutralize their super abilities. So it's like good Lex, bad Lex, good team, bad team, mind explosion. The idea of a rogue team member is terrifying, but a rogue team? What a nightmare. How do you stop them? Number 10, the football game. To kick off this list, pun intended, we go back to the golden age of comics with Jay Barrick to Flash Comics issue 1. So back in the 50s, the issue opens up with Jay trying to get the attention of Joan, but she's not interested, all because he sucks at football. In her words, she even says, "A man of your build and brains could be a star." Both tridents hurt. Oh no, whatever shall we do? Haha. And then in comes the super speedster just to ruin the game for the rest of the guys who've trained for like 16 years of their life to get there. And I love how happy he is too at this moment. Like, he's clearly been waiting for this his entire life. Like, he just flies through touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. One guy on the other team has the right idea. He straight up quits. And the game ends being 65-30. I mean, save some action for the rest of us, Jay. We warmed up for like 2 hours, come on. And before we move on to number 9, guys, if you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps us a lot here, and it's right there. It's right somewhere down there, it's that one. It looks like a hand with a thumb, it's hard to miss. All right, thank you, now back to the list. Number 9, Super Kids. Nothing beats a family outing. Either that means a trip to the movies or battling monsters with your super kids. That's right, once Wally West and his family returned from a fun little Speed Force trip, his kids had powers. How fun. Now, being so young, there's the Incredibles type question. Should they be allowed to be superheroes? Well, in the Flash Volume 2, issue 233, Wally comes up with the mindset that speedsters age differently. And sometimes it's hard to understand how much longer they have to live. So Wally thinks it's best to let them do what they want because YOLO, am I right? And it's a pretty cute issue. Like, the kids are eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, trying to fuel up for the fight. In the first few pages, Iris even admits that she stole the sandwich from a fat kid, so everybody wins. Those are her words, not mine. God, I should add another point to this list just for that line. What a savage. Number 8, the loop of life. Everybody has that one memory they wish they could just delete from their brain. Like maybe you were late for work and then you spilled your coffee all over your lovely flannel shirt. Now, what if you had to relive that nightmare over and over, Groundhog Day style? Well, that's what happens to Zoom. In Flash issue 200, Wally West uses his powers to defeat him, but he freezes him and makes him repeat the worst day of his life over and over and over again. Now, this is why I want to be a speedster. This issue right here, I would love to do this. I would just make everybody chill out in their favorite memory and just kind of lay low. Maybe a couple I'd put in some embarrassing memories, you know? Of course, I mean, I'm a human. Like, he looks like he's in so much pain. You could just tell by the dramatic one teardrop. This is literal hell that he's in. He just sits and repeats the line, "He doesn't have a gun, trust me, Ashley," over and over. Poor Hunter Zolomon. I mean, he's not the best guy in the world, but you can't help for feeling somewhat bad. I mean, he's a human. And number 7, more mind games. Yes, of course, we go back to that same issue, Flash 200, where he puts forth this amazing plan to mess with everybody's mind. So now at this point, the Flash thinks, you know what, it's probably best if everybody just forgets who he is. Not too bad of an idea. So he gets some help from the Spectre and Hal Jordan. They talk it out, and Wally figures if he mind wipes everybody, all will be good. Bang bang, boom. Well, Wally ends up forgetting who the Flash is as well, for a short amount of time. So with everybody not knowing about the Flash causes the opposite reaction. There's more crime. No speedsters in the way. Heh, let's go rob some shit. And number 6, death is cool. Flash Comics issue 1, this time it's in the shape of Jay Garrick. So Flash decides it's a smart idea to go and attack a group of villains. Now at this point it's early in the comics and he's just now buckling down with the responsibilities of his new powers. So he goes, I'll go after them, let's do it. So what does he do? He ends up in a chase with a villain named Sir Satan. Cool name. And then he runs his car off the road, literally runs it off the road. Then there he was in terrible shape in the burning car, and Jay, furthermore wanting to take on the superhero responsibilities, decides not to help but to rather just look cool. Like at least collect his teeth off the dashboard first, you know? Fix his hair, maybe ask him if he needs a band-aid or two. I get it though. If I took down a supervillain, I'd probably talk some shit. I'd do monologues. I would do like Shakespeare monologues while he's burning in his car. And number 5, Prison Break. We go now to the Flash 164 from 1987, and the cover of the page shows Flash being put in the slammer. Ooh, the Flash is stuck in this mirror dimension where he doesn't exist, so there's a lot of questions floating around for the Flash. Now, instead of using his super speed to exit the station and figure out a game plan, he super kicks everybody's ass. I mean, this world thinks that all superheroes are evil. Way to prove their points right off the bat. The Flash even says, I gotta keep my cool, no matter where I am, I'm not gonna scrap with police. And then he immediately hoofs one of them in the jaw, breaking the shield guard on his mask. Number 4, ignoring a call for help. Flash 89 in 1994 Volume 2, Wally West was involved in a civil lawsuit. Ooh. The plaintiff, Allison Armitage, was injured so badly while Wally was out kicking ass that she ended up having to get her legs amputated. That's how bad this ended up. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, she said Wally West ignored her when she cried out for help. That of course caused her injury. She wanted $20 million for the whole case. Allison's lawyer was none other than the villain Abracadabra. So Wally thinks that there's something fishy going on, and the Barry Allen Foundation made an agreement that Wally can't use the Flash outfit or persona. Quite the punishment if you ask me, jeez. You're grounded, bucko. But don't worry, him and Allison come to an agreement in the next issue, but regaining the ability to walk was not included in said agreement. Now the best part of this issue has to be the court scene. The Flash goes nuts. He's asked if he did everything he could, and he's like, I'm fast as lightning. And they're like, yes, but did you do what you could? And he's like, I'm super fast though. I don't know. And number 3, killed Reverse Flash. Flash issue 324, we have the Trial of the Flash storyline, and the cover of the issue is enough to make you want to pick it up and take a peek. We find Barry as he sets for holy matrimony with Fiona Webb. Now, leading up to what's supposed to be the happiest day of your life, Reverse Flash starts leaving creepy messages for Barry. One message literally spells out in big letters, guess who's gonna kill your wife again, with a question mark that looks like a 2. Maybe he's going too fast, couldn't do it. Yeah, Reverse Flash had done that previously, but this time, he doesn't just punch him in the head a few times and talk smack. No, this time he changes it up a bit and breaks his neck. And afterwards, Barry was arrested. The police officer comes in and literally says, "Oh, I don't like the angle of that neck." Like, how many, like, he's like, "Hey, I've seen some necks in my time, rookie. That's a bent neck." I sleep on this neck quite funny, so whenever I see bent necks, I'm always like, ooh, I feel like the bent neck lady. Now, of course, it was an accident, but it still happened, and it's still pretty violent, so you gotta include it. And number 2, immobile inertia. So at the start of this video, I mentioned the name Bart Allen. Bart is the grandson of Barry Allen. Now, at this time, there's nobody like Barry or Wally to take the mantle of the Flash. He skipped the whole teenage years thing and went right to being an adult. Speedsters are wild, thus becoming the Flash for a small amount of time. Because the evil speedster Inertia, aka Thaddeus Thawne, killed Bart Allen. This evil clone of Bart Allen is responsible for him being gunned down. So when Wally West returned, he was pretty angry. But instead of killing him, he freezes Inertia, making him this sentient statue, and added to the Flash Museum, just blinking and breathing for eternity. Of course, staring at Bart Allen the whole time. Quite the punishment, I like it. I'm here for it, as the kids would say. And finally, number 1, Flashpoint. One of the biggest upcoming DC movies, and for good reason, the Flashpoint storyline, where the Flash tries to go back in time to save his mother from dying her tragic death. Not a bad idea at all. I'd probably try and do that too. This story was released in 2011, written by Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert, and starts with Barry waking up with no Flash powers. Interesting. In fact, the Flash doesn't even exist. Everything has changed. His mother, Nora, was still alive. Score! And his father, Henry, died 3 years prior. Not score. Yeah, in his own timeline, his father's actually alive. He's just in jail. There's no Justice League at this point, and Superman isn't even in the picture. The best part? And one plot point that we're most looking forward to is that Batman in this universe is actually Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. So Bruce ended up dying that night instead of his parents. So this caused his mother Martha to go insane, and then she ended up becoming the Joker, and that's why during the opening credits of Batman vs Superman, we're all hyped in the audience because we see Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohen, 2 amazing actors in such a small opening scene with no dialogue. Interesting. Now, with recent news of Michael Keaton set to return in that storyline, Jeffrey Dean Morgan took to the internet and said, "Michael Keaton swooped in and took my gig." Nah, I think that's super cool. Ever since Zack Snyder walked away, my whole kind of bit in that world has walked away with him. However, there's always a chat going on. God, I hope Jeffrey Dean Morgan would be the best dark Batman. Like, we've kind of been waiting for a long time. Just do it, just do it. So we shall see, fingers crossed. I think that movie's coming out June 2nd, 2022. For now, I mean, let's all wear masks. Maybe we'll see it sooner. Just an idea.
Number 10, threaten children with a gun. Okay, Selena was also just a kid herself here when this one happened, but that also makes it almost even worse. While thinking back to how her sister Maggie was tortured and driven insane by being fed pieces of her husband who was tortured and killed by Black Mask, she also thinks back to other times she had failed Maggie. One such instance occurred when Selena stole costumes for her and her sister. She lied to Maggie, telling her the shop owner had said that they could borrow them. What she also didn't tell Maggie was that she also had stolen a gun. The gun was real, and later in the night Selena used it to threaten some kids who were bullies and who were threatening a boy with a knife. Maggie was so upset when she found out her sister had stolen the costumes and the gun, and told Selena they should have asked a grown-up for help, as Selena could have killed someone if the gun went off. Selena dismissed her sister, saying she didn't care if she killed someone. That is cold, Selena. Also, you're just a kid! Number 9. Pickpocket. Selena started out as a thief at a young age. Depending on her origins, she was either forced into stealing for the woman who ran the orphanage she ended up in after her parents' death, or she escaped the orphanage she was mistreated in and turned to a life of theft in order to feed herself. In fact, originally it was because of her youthful attempt at pickpocketing that she ended up working and training with a carnival. And this is where Selena developed her nimbleness, sleight of hand, and gymnastics skills. While she had to pickpocket to survive, it's still not good to steal from people just because you can or you need to. And Selena started down this path of thievery from a very young age. And before we continue on to this next point, just a quick reminder to click that like if you haven't already. It really does help us out here at the channel. Number 8. Humiliated Azrael. During the Night Quest story, Azrael has stepped into the role of Batman, filling in for Bruce after his back was broken by Bane and he had to focus on healing. Jean-Paul Valley can't fool Catwoman though. She recognizes that there is someone else beneath the mask other than her sometimes beloved Bruce. She thwarts the law and escapes Azrael's clutches, shouting to the world as she gets away for all of Gotham and the GCPD to hear that this Batman is a fake. Ooh. That has gotta hurt the ego. Number 7. Making her mark. Back in her early days when Selina was still putting together her costume and learning how to fight, she incorporated claws into it. On one occasion she was inspired when seeing the damage her claws could do, to leave a mark on her victims. Her calling card for a time would then become clawing the face of her enemies. Those who opposed Catwoman and lived to tell about it as such would always be reminded of her by the scars her claws left on their face. Number 6. Hellhound. In issue 36 of the 90s Catwoman series, Catwoman refuses to kill her enemy Hellhound, but instead leaves him tied up in the desert, and all alone. She knows he'll likely escape and doesn't want to kill him. Actually, refusing him death is even worse for Hellhound, who has only ever wanted Catwoman to do just that, to kill him. Hellhound believes if Catwoman kills him, it will actually allow him to be reborn as a true Hound of Hell. Alas, she never gives him the satisfaction. Leaving someone tied up in the desert, too, without any sure means of escape is pretty cruel, even if they are a villain. And while this is one of the worst things Catwoman does in this issue, Bruce also commits his own crime by having that 90s ponytail. No one is without guilt in the 90s. There were just lots of terrible things that happened. Number 5. Killed Black Mask. But I mean, come on, he kinda deserved it, right? Still, in a world where Catwoman had been attempting to be a hero, this was a big one. This was around the time that Selina had a crisis of conscience after learning her decision to become a hero had actually not been her own, but had been implanted in her mind by Zatanna's magic. This caused Catwoman to return to the dark side once more and question her alignment and actions. When confronting Black Mask after he targeted Selina, focusing on making her life and the lives of her loved ones a living hell, she decided to call his bluff and shoot him point blank in the head, killing him. Roman had expected Catwoman to come after him, but he never thought that she'd kill him, considering she was more of the hero than villain type. Boy, did he pick the wrong time to press his luck. Number 4. Earth 2. While in certain continuities this can be considered a different version of Catwoman entirely, in her early days in the comics Catwoman was much more villainous and ruthless than the version of her we've come to know. This earlier version of the character would kill those who got in her way without much consideration for the severity of her actions. At one point she allowed an ambassador to be mauled to death by a leopard. This was during the time when she wore a cat mask to hide her true identity, which honestly was a look. It reminds me of the Cats live action film, which was something. It was an experience. Number 3. Became a crime lord. For a while Catwoman actually left her mantle of the cat, becoming someone new, though equally if not more villainous at times. In New 52, Selina was revealed to be the daughter of Rex the Lion Calabrese, who was revealed to be at one time one of Gotham's kingpins. Selina reached out for advice after initially rebuking his offer to take over his criminal empire, becoming a mob boss herself. While she was a mob boss, she often looked impeccably good in suits while committing some of the worst crimes, including constant thefts and kidnapping. However, at least Selina was originally drawn to become a crime boss for good reasons. She believed that Gotham needed a sense of order and sought to stop some of the overt gang violence by seizing control. Number 2. Making out with Nightwing. During a heist no less. Also, Catwoman's depiction in this whole issue of Nightwing is something. It's very interesting. One of the most talked about shocking moments within issue 52 of Nightwing Volume 2 is when Nightwing and Catwoman have a makeout session, which obviously Selina instigates. This also happens in the same issue where she has a dream about being married to Batman. Ew, Selina, that's like making out with your adopted son. You just had a dream that you were married to Batman. What are you doing? Don't do that. Stop it. What's worse is at the end of this issue, it's all implied that this is all a part of a ploy of Catwoman's to make Batman jealous. I have no words. Number 1. Leaving Bruce at the altar. Finally, Tom King was going to deliver on a story that had felt like it had been coming our way forever. Batman and Catwoman were finally going to be married and tie the knot. They had told the Bat Kids, planned an opulent though intimate event, and the day had finally come. But while these two have always seemed to be fated to be together, Selina started to have some doubt, planted by her friend Holly Robinson. As a result, Selina ends up leaving Bruce at the altar, breaking his heart. In the end, it was revealed that this was actually all a part of Bane's ultimate plan to finally break Batman for good, and it was definitely a pretty effective attempt at starting off that process. Number 10 was a criminal. Yep, remember that time Lois accepted bribes to delay a story and used her bribes to buy fancy clothing, then got found out and was sent to prison pending her trial? No? Well, that's likely because although that all did happen, In the end, it was revealed that it was all part of a plot that was arranged between Lois and Superman to nail some crooks. Lois pretended to accept the bribes, working alongside the authorities simply to get closer to the head honcho and help Superman and the police capture him. He was the one to help break her out of prison, hoping to intimidate Lois and recapture the evidence she supposedly had on him. Unfortunately for him, Superman crashed the party, following the escape vehicle to his hideout. The authorities arrested him and Lois got rewarded with a fur coat for her troubles. But still, she looked pretty guilty through a lot of it. You only find that out at the end, so if you read like 70% of that story, you're gonna be like, what is happening? Lois, stop accepting these bribes. Number 9. Won a Pulitzer. Lois has won many Pulitzers across multiple universes and alternate realities, and while this might not initially sound like such a dark thing to have happened, in the film Superman Returns we learn just what story won Lane her esteemed prize. The subject? How much the world doesn't actually need heroes like Superman. I love how against the original concept of the character this is, while also kind of coinciding with it. Lois originally was a woman obsessed with Superman to the extent of even focusing more on him at times than pursuing the best story. But in Superman Returns she is both fixated with Superman, but not in a lovey-dovey you must marry me type way, not with this story. The title of her piece that won her the prize was Why the World Doesn't Need Superman. Of course, by the end of the film, Lois has kind of changed her mind and writes a piece about why the world does need him. But her first piece still stands. Also, her first piece won the Pulitzer, and the second one, I don't know if she won a Pulitzer for that one. I think they were like, we don't like this one as much. Can you win multiple Pulitzer prizes anyways? Like once you've won one, can you still win more? I think you can. Number 8. Torture research. Garth Ennis's Punisher story, The Slavers, is widely recognized for being one of the darkest ones out there. While the Punisher seems justified in taking on some of the worst and most horrible people that he's ever gone up against, and you definitely root for him, he also goes to great lengths to deal out his own form of justice here. At one point we see Castle going through medical textbooks just so he can increase his knowledge for enhanced torturing purposes. There are countless violent moments in the story that both feel justified and also make you wince as you see just how far the Punisher is willing to go to punish these people. It should also be noted that this is a mission of vengeance that Frank is actually undertaking not even for himself, but for someone who escaped these villains, a woman named Viroka, and for her baby whom her captors had killed. Number 7. Torturing Barracuda. So Barracuda is admittedly a villain in the comics, but still the way Punisher disposes of villains can sometimes just be so graphic and awful that it leaves you sympathizing with them. That was the kind of fate Barracuda was resigned to, a villain introduced during Garth Ennis's time writing The Punisher and the 2004 Punisher series, which was part of the Max label at Marvel. This Punisher, by the way, is also resigned to another alternate world as well, and honestly a lot of his actions were pretty horrific. So yeah, this is not Earth 616, my friends. This is Max, adult comic stuff. When it came to Barracuda, Castle punished him by connecting some sensitive parts to a car battery and shocking the heck out of him. Later on he would try to kill Barracuda in an explosion, but only severely burn him. Then he would chop off both his arms and bury a pickaxe in his chest before shooting his head to bits with an AK-47. It's pretty awful, I gotta say. Number 6. Kills off the last humans. During Marvel's The End, Marvel shared with us what various characters would do when faced with the events of and aftermath of the apocalypse. The Punisher was able to track down the last surviving humans, who also happened to be a bunch of jerks who were basically responsible for the events of World War III, which had resulted in this apocalyptic scenario and world that we found ourselves in. They offered the Punisher a choice. He could let them live and they would work to restart the planet and human race using genetic samples, or he could kill them for what they'd done, but you know, then humanity would die with them. Being the Punisher, he decided of course to kill them. Though I gotta say, it definitely sounds like they deserved that, but still, he just like condemned humanity for forever. Now we're gonna be extinct. Number 5. Serves Thanos. If you don't know Cosmic Ghost Rider, I highly recommend checking him out. He's an alternate version of Frank Castle that agreed to become a spirit of vengeance and thereby Ghost Rider. As such, he survives basically the death of all of planet Earth when Thanos comes to raise it in his destruction of the universe, and eventually when everyone else who would stand up against Thanos in the cosmos has been defeated, joins Thanos. He does at least try to stand up to Thanos in the beginning, but in the end kind of goes insane and then sees serving Thanos as really his only option, especially if he doesn't want to be alone. because, you know, it's hard to live forever and be alone forever. It's really sad. CGR helps Thanos to destroy what is left of the universe and remains loyal to the Mad Titan Thanos even when an opponent looms who could actually stand a chance at defeating him, known as the Fallen One, formerly the Silver Surfer, who now also wields the power of Mjolnir. Number 4. Raised Thanos. Or at least he attempted to anyways. This heinous act, which doesn't inherently sound too heinous, truth be told, came to us from the alternate reality that Cosmic Ghost Rider belongs to. Later on in CGR's story, he is granted the opportunity to travel to any time and place that he would like via Odin. This twisted version of Frank chooses to travel back to the moment when Thanos was born. CGR attempts to use his pen and stare on the young baby, who it doesn't work on because, you know, baby Thanos is still at this point innocent and is yet to become corrupted. Although I gotta be honest, does the pen and stare really ever work for Ghost Riders? I feel like I see it fail more times than it works in comics. CGR, instead of killing baby Thanos, decides then to raise baby Thanos himself, hoping to alter the future by teaching Thanos to be good. He later runs into the future version of that baby Thanos, all grown up, and learns that raising Thanos led to an even worse alternate future for Earth, where people are imprisoned by this Punisher Thanos, kept in camps, and killed if they choose to step out of line when it comes to Thanos' plan for enforced peace on Earth. Basically, without meaning to, Frank actually created an alternate reality where living on Earth is kinda like living in hell. Number 3. Executions. While it might not be as bad as condemning Earth to the fate of his adopted son, Punisher Thanos, I personally find this gruesome depiction of the character even worse. This take on the Punisher and his actions comes to us from the 2005 Punisher video game. Here you gotta play as Frank Castle beating up targets to secure key information before executing them. The adults-only rated game was described as having over 100 unique executions for fans to choose from. Wow. The fact that many of these were also super brutal and torturous ways to die only made all of the Punisher's actions here, which you as the player were in control of, even worse. Talk about a glorification of violence. Number 2. Kills the Marvel Universe. In the story Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, we get a front row seat to watching Frank Castle eliminate literally pretty much every hero, villain, and just about anyone else who gets in his way, as he makes quick work of the entire Marvel verse. As awful as this is, it's also really impressive that Frank, who is admittedly just a human, is able to take out all these superpowered beings so successfully and often efficiently. In the end, after Punisher has eliminated just about everyone there is, one person is left for him to take down, for it to be considered a completely clean sweep: himself. And Frank doesn't even hesitate. Now, what caused all this chaos, by the way? Like in many other Punisher stories, it was the death of his family, which in this reality appeared to have happened while they were caught in the crossfire of a superhuman battle. Number 1. Excuses. One of the worst things about the Punisher is that he tries to make you feel like his actions are justified by using the loss of his family as an excuse. And oftentimes that also works for us readers. Now, I'm not saying that what happened to Frank Castle's family wasn't terrible, because it was. But ultimately, what the Punisher represents is this obsession with violence and the feeling of a never-ending war. Jason Aaron, in his Punisher run, attempted to reveal the veiled truth behind Frank's excuses for continuing this never-ending battle, which honestly Frank himself is likely not even aware of, when he proposed a story with Frank Castle contemplating divorce moments before his family is killed, and also returning home and basically questioning if he actually enjoys life or if he would rather just kill people.
Number 10. A healthy diet. What makes a deadly space goop even more terrifying? Well, let's start with its choice of meal. Us. He likes to eat us and our brains. In The Amazing Spider-Man issue 333, Venom said to Spider-Man, "We want to eat your brain." Now, him just saying that to you must be intimidating enough, let alone actually doing it, which we see in Venom the Hunger issue 1. He even surprises himself too when it goes from just being a threat to an actual thing that happens. The symbiote needs to feast on brains, not just because it's yummy and fun, but because of a certain chemical found in the brain instead. Eddie isn't a big fan of this throughout the comics and often prevents it from happening by giving Venom chocolate instead. In my opinion, that's a really good solution. Offer anybody chocolate instead of anything, they'll probably take it. Because chocolate contained the same chemical, so it worked. It was a nice tasty substitute. Until eventually writers just stopped including the need for human brains for a meal altogether, which is great. Let's just do more of that, less eating brains. And before we head over to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up down below, that would be great. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to our list. Number 9, pushed Peter Parker. Now when I say he pushed Peter Parker, you might be thinking, okay, well, so what? This guy does backflips off the Empire State Building for fun. So what's a push really gonna do to this guy? Well, this was an issue because Peter Parker's spider sense didn't go off, which he found troubling. It should have went off. It's danger. Why didn't they tell him? Now, do keep in mind, this is before Venom made his big comic book debut in Amazing Spider-Man 300, so his ability to block his spider sense was still a mystery. So Peter luckily saved himself with his reflexes and good Samaritans to help him out off the tracks, but Venom was trying to get rid of Peter long before he was slurping up bad guy brains. Now, the fact that he didn't say anything catchy or announce his big plan, any villain monologue, makes it more realistic and pretty scary. Number 8, Mary Jane trauma. Back in his first comic book appearance in 1988, one of the first things Venom did was introduce himself to Mary Jane in the next issue. In this moment, she can't even remember her name. She knows almost nothing because her mind has been harshly numbed while she's cruelly drowned in this onrushing tide of primal fear. That's what the comic says. That's how they described it. And these emotions may never fully fade away. And it's all thanks to Venom. She's so beyond scared that when Peter walks in with the black suit on, she thinks that it's Venom for a brief second. Venom even says that although it wasn't their target, shaking her up could still work. Yeah, for sure. Let's just terrify some people and ruin their lives just because. Awesome. Therapy not included. Number 7, Darkseid's powers. Sometimes you have a choice, and sometimes that choice is a lose-lose. These happen a lot in comic book movies, like Doctor Strange giving away the Time Stone to Thanos and then powering him up. It's a bad move, but it's better than the alternative still, because he saw the future, he knows. So in Wonder Woman's case, he was less of a problem this time around. So when Brainiac took control of Warworld in the Our Worlds at War storyline, specifically Wonder Woman issue 173, Wonder Woman gives away part of her soul in order to restore Darkseid's powers. Why the hell would she do that? To fight off the alien Imperiex? Yeah? Okay, I guess that's fine, that's fair. That's more than fair. I mean, after his powers are restored, they're able to stop Brainiac 13 and Imperiex. But you can't be juicing that guy up. I mean, of all people, not him. Number 6, ahead of the game. So one of the changes to reality that occurs during the Flashpoint event is when Wonder Woman and Aquaman get married. It's great. I mean, well, not really. Weddings are just fun, I guess. I don't know. I hear the song Shout and then I black out. It's so weird. This is a reality now where Bruce Wayne was killed and not his parents. So Superman is in a government lab having a not so relaxing time, and then we see Diana being saved by a sea monster from Aquaman. Ah, how lovely. A nice thing. Ah, yes, classic Wonder Woman. Nothing like getting cheated on and then having your head cut off, adding injury to insult in this case. She then pops her crown off her severed head and then places it nicely on her own. And of course, a war follows between the Atlanteans and the Amazons, but comes to a lovely conclusion when Wonder Woman kills Aquaman by stabbing him in the back. Literally. Number 5, hung up on Trevor. Okay, so the Flashpoint paradox has a good chunk of not so pleasant moments. I mean, that's the whole point. Some things aren't meant to be changed, or else you risk opening the door to these nasty other realities. Like the one where Wonder Woman kills. A lot. So in the comics, we see Wonder Woman, rather Queen Diana at this point, send some Amazons to kill Steve Trevor, which alone, as I say that, just sounds terrible. But to make it even more list-worthy, the animated version is so much darker. Yikes. Okay, we see this scene in the Flashpoint movie, I'll stand up and clap. I'll do it. I'll be like, yes, you guys, someone did it. Number 4, bat for a bat. Jealousy can turn people, sometimes for the best. Like if your ex starts dating somebody new and you're like, I'll show you by bettering myself physically and mentally. Haha, I showed you. Or sometimes jealousy can make you fight another superhero because you're too in love with Batman. Either one. In Batman Brave and the Bold issue 78, we find Batgirl and Wonder Woman going at it, all for the love of Batman. I mean, it starts off kind of cute. Wonder Woman writes, I love Batman in the sky, hell yeah. And then this plane comes in and who could it be? Is that Batgirl? What is she? Oh, she's wiping with a lovely message, awesome. Oh, she's writing something of her own, what does it say? Only I love Batman, Batgirl, nice. So Wonder Woman's like, haha, okay, hold on a sec. Lasso's Batgirl, she's upset, I mean, fair. She just wiped away her message and she's like, no, I love him more. Impossible, she says, and then this is where Batgirl goes too far. She says back, nothing is impossible for you. you unhip chick. Wonder Woman ended up winning, but at what cost? Number 3, Hunted the Huntress. Now, when it comes to non-canon stories or alternate dark realities, sure, it doesn't really count as much. You can kind of put those away in your head and pretend like they don't exist. But these horrible actions are still done by our beloved heroes. It's hard to get over some of these happenings. It's kind of like when you have a dream your sibling is being mean to you, and then you wake up the next morning just angry at them for no reason. Like before school, they're like, "Good morning," and you're like, "Morning," whatever. Shut up. So on the topic of injustice, we find our main supers in a world that's not so bright. Issue 21 of Injustice Year 3 shows us just how great Wonder Woman is at cracking the whip when she wraps the lasso of pain around the neck of Huntress. And then the crack we hear is, well, it's exactly what you think. Now, she didn't mean to kill her, but I also didn't mean to wrist shot an orange hockey ball at my neighbor's parked car when I was 13. Accident or not, you're still paying the price, Buster. Number 2. Cut to the chase. With Wonder Woman 1984 getting the official go-ahead to release on HBO Max this holiday season, it's fair to look into some other run-ins with the two. One that's particularly notable, starting in Wonder Woman Volume 3, Issue 26, titled Rise of the Olympian. So we see her interrogation skills bump up a notch when she crossed paths with Cheetah. So she decides to threaten her, of course by demanding Cheetah to tell her the location of Etta Candy, or else she'll cut her tail off. That's crazy. That's like the superhero version of a mob boss taking a finger. That's so thug. And number 1, she left humanity behind. With time jumps and time heists, superhero flicks can bring up a lot of questions during the downtime in between these films. Like for example, Kat going back in time to be with Peggy. Wonderful, so sweet. May have even brought a tear out of my eye. Maybe 2 tears, or 70 tears. But then you think of all the things that still happen in real life and you're like, really? Like he was there the whole time? I feel like he could have done something for like, I don't know, one of those horrible events. Now of course in doing so it may just cause even worse things to happen, like we see with Barry Allen saving his mother, but then Wonder Woman hangs Steve Trevor. So it's like, This idea comes crawling back in now that we see Wonder Woman in modern day Justice League movies. She tells Bruce at the end of Dawn of Justice that men made a world where standing together is impossible, and left humanity for a century. I mean, again, I feel like you could have just stepped in, helped out with maybe, I don't know, World War II?
Number 10, House of M. Starting off with one of the big ones. Scarlet Witch is infamously unstable. It has resulted in the end of the line for multiple heroes on multiple different occasions. More on that later. Her tendency to lose it caused the Avengers and X-Men to come together to think of ways to deal with her. Some, including Xavier, even suggesting they put her somewhere she cannot do harm. Somewhere like the afterlife, for example. As you can imagine, it didn't sit very well with her when her brother Quicksilver told her about this and urged her to take action against it. Wanda used her reality warping chaos magic powers to rewrite reality to the House of M. A reality where mutants outnumbered humans, where a few heroes had what they wanted most to stop them from rebellion, and Magneto was the ultimate ruler. As for Wanda herself, she had one body that acted as her in public, while she could remain with her children, again in private. Number 9, Undead Horde. In the comic books, mutants have always had many different places to call home. One of the more long-lasting recent ones would be the island of Krakoa. It was a place where mutants felt safe, and no one but mutants had entry. Fortunately, Scarlet Witch is a mutant. Feeling regret for an action that will be much higher on this list, Wanda wanted to make up for her horrible mistakes by resurrecting all the mutants who met their end in Genosha at the hands of Cassandra Nova. Only, thanks to the fact that she can't seem to ever fix anything without actually doing a whole lot of damage, the deceased mutants were actually brought back as zombies. A whole army of mutant zombies invaded Krakoa, and it took the direct intervention from Doctor Strange to fix the problem. That becomes a bit of a theme for Wanda and Stephen Strange.
Number 8, re-establish the X-Force. The X-Force is basically a mutant team for when there are missions that don't really fall on brand for the X-Men. Until we had the Hellions, they were kind of like our mutant Suicide Squad, except mostly made up of heroes instead of villains. But these were heroes who weren't afraid of killing when needed. The heroes who were more edgy than the rest of us. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge fan of the X-Force really, but I can recognize when the team is necessary, and I know when we need to use them and when it's time to bring that kill squad back together. Unfortunately, not everyone agreed with me. Some questioned my motives, while others have been known to judge me for ordering other mutants to kill while keeping my own hands clean of these deeds. Although in my opinion, ordering someone to kill makes me just as responsible, and it still greatly weighs on my own conscience, which I think is what many people forget. Number 7. Used young mutants as weapons. That's a harsh way of putting it. Professor X did a similar thing with all of us, and I guess a part of me was emulating him in a way. Although at least I didn't use a mutant to train other mutants and tell people it was just a danger room as opposed to a sentient being. But anyways, this became a huge controversy when I suggested that New Mutant Oya do what she felt was right when faced with a hard decision. Poor Oya was only 14 years old, and she already felt terrible about the accidental deaths she'd caused when her powers first manifested. So the wording I used there was poor in terms of providing guidance. I truly believed we were almost out of time and Oya was our only hope, despite Wolverine's pleas that he could still make it in time. As a result, Oya killed members of the Hellfire Club and everyone labeled me as someone who molded our young recruits into ruthless killers and dangerous weapons. Number 6. Exploited X-23. When we originally took Laura Kinney in, I wanted to utilize her, but Wolverine disagreed with me. We needed to get the X-Force back together. I needed that team. I went to Wolverine and explained why, and he was all for it. Although he did mention the fact that I was keeping it from Emma, which, yes, I'm not proud of. We needed to come up with a roster as the team had disbanded. Now, I suggested X-23. Laura Kinney had been trained as a killer and she was highly skilled. She was perfect. But Wolverine felt differently, that she didn't have the life experience to make that choice if offered. I probably should have talked to Wolverine earlier about it, but I'd already offered Laura the spot and she'd accepted. I wanted to utilize her, but Wolverine saw it as me using her. Number 5. Cheated on Jean Grey. So originally I was personally all about Jean Grey. She was perfect for me, I thought. But I don't know. Even I have come to see that Emma, might actually be a better fit for me in the long run. Still, with that being said, it was pretty terrible how that whole thing started. Emma and I were having a psychic affair behind Jean's back. What's worse, I also may have had Emma dress up and emulate Jean within our minds. I mean, she was more the one who offered that, but still, she even changed her hair color. Yeah, it was not good. And what's worse, I knew it was wrong and yet I still went along with it. Eventually, Jean found out, telepathically walking in on Emma and I together. Definitely not a moment I'm proud of. Number 4. Almost made the Skrulls extinct. This one made the cut? Really? I feel like I was at least a little justified here, but I guess I could see how this might seem pretty bad, especially as, yes, not all Skrulls are evil. During Secret Invasion, however, I was desperate. I wasn't sure we'd make it, and so I had to take some pretty severe action there. The plan I came up with was to use the Legacy virus as a template to create basically a Skrull version of that virus. A version that targeted and wiped out Skrulls. Now, this worked well, but maybe a little too well, as the Skrull alien race was then kind of at great risk overall because of the virus. Which, yeah, I feel kind of bad about that part. Number 3. Made out on Jean's grave. I mean, this whole storyline was really a strange one. This happened because Jean's psychic ghost told me that it was okay and basically gave Emma and I her blessing after she died. Jean had apparently learned of an alternate future where everything went haywire because I wasn't fit to lead the X-Men and hoped that me finding happiness would be a good way to prevent this from coming about. Emma and I could have been a little more tasteful though, perhaps, when it came to the location in which we chose to express our feelings for one another. In retrospect, Jean's grave was probably not a good place for a makeout session. Number 2. Killed Professor X. Wow, okay. How can you really blame me for this one? I wasn't even myself at the time, must I remind you? So basically what had happened at this point was the Phoenix Force had returned to Earth during Avengers vs. X-Men. It had taken hold of 5 of us after Tony Stark split it up. Divided, the power was manageable to hold on to, but it also made it easier for the Avengers to defeat us. Slowly, those who were part of the Phoenix 5 were defeated and fell away. I was one of the last people to hold onto the power, which meant, yeah, I kind of flew off the handle, and yeah, I kind of stole that last power from Emma Frost. The professor tried to talk me down and I just was not having it, so I took that power and I killed him. But afterward, I felt really bad about the whole thing, and even agreed that I needed to be basically put under arrest for my crimes. I didn't feel good about that one either, although some may have believed that Professor X had it coming. Number 1. Abandon his family. Okay, this is probably in retrospect one of the worst things I've done in the comics. After Jean died, I never thought I'd love again, until I met Madeline Pryor. Maddie was something else, and what's more, she weirdly resembled Jean. Like, we're talking almost identical. For a while, I thought she actually might be the reincarnation of Jean's soul, but then I thought, nah, that's silly. She probably has no relation to Jean whatsoever. We got married, had a son together, everything was going great, then Jean came back from the dead. Or she wasn't really ever dead? Anyways, it's all very confusing. Either way, she was back, that was all that mattered, so I returned to the X-Men, which kinda meant abandoning my wife and son in Alaska. Yeah. Maddie didn't take it too great, especially after she learned she was actually a clone of Jean Grey made by Mr. Sinister for the sole purpose of mating with me. She got pretty evil and ensorcelled my brother to boot, and my leaving was a big motivation for her transformation from innocent bystander to evil sorceress whose powers mirrored and were on a similar scale to Jean's.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Hush. Dr. Thomas Elliot was a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne's. Their upbringing, however, is just a touch different. See, Tommy tried to kill his parents so he could inherit their fortune, but unfortunately that didn't go as planned. But because Bruce's father, Thomas, was so great with his hands, surgically he was able to save them. So he of course became the masked villain, Hush. He spent his years working up ways to get revenge on Bruce Wayne, even getting help from, of course, Red Hood. Now of course he knows quite a bit about Bruce, so Red Hood's job was to mess with Bruce's head. That version of Red Hood ended up being seen as Clayface, because he wasn't ready to reveal himself to Batman just yet. So while the Riddler's mind was enhanced in the Lazarus Pit dip, he figured out who Batman was. But of course Jason Todd gave him confirmation. And before we go on to number 9, if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit that like button, because it helps us out here at the studio quite a bit. Now moving on to number 9, Joker Beatdown. See, usually when a main character dies in a comic book or a movie, the rest of the film just shows the other lead gearing up for revenge. In Jason Todd's case, death was not the avenging action to make. See, after the Joker had killed Jason Todd, Batman didn't kill the Joker. Now, of course, his one rule holds him from doing that, but in this case, is it warranted? Red Hood believes so. In fact, he ended up kidnapping the Joker and torturing him, even giving Batman an ultimatum. Kill Jason, or let Jason kill the Joker. The beating itself is just beautifully awful. Number 8, Arkham Knight. Fans rejoiced when the 2015 Arkham Knight game was announced. We loved the series since Arkham Asylum, back in 2009. Wow, 11 years ago. Get out of town, I feel sick. Are we all getting old? Are we just old now? Is that it? But when it comes to Arkham Knight, this was one of my favorite video games of all time. Not even just saying that. So of course I have to include it in this list. The villain in the game was of course the Arkham Knight, who was revealed to be Jason Todd. Now instead of dying at the hands of Joker, he was being held hostage and driven insane, eventually becoming one of the hardest villains I've played in a superhero game. So he sports the new outfit and conflicts chaos for the 17-hour gameplay. That's around 45 hours for the 100%ers. I got to like 42 hours, I couldn't do it. It was too much. The Riddler trophies? Get out of town. Who has the time? If you haven't already played it through, there's a few alternate endings. So make sure if you do play, you really try and collect everything, because those alternate endings are creme de la creme. Number 7, The Last Crusade. We go now to the 2016 Dark Knight Returns, The Last Crusade, written by Frank Miller and Brian Azzarello. So off the bat, readers see Candy Forsythe and Len Wright on Good Morning Gotham. They rejoice over the fact that the Joker has been taken into custody again, but this time they look at Robin as he's just a boy. They even use the words child endangerment when referring to him taking down the Joker. See, Jason Todd's methods are shown quite to be violent. After a chase with Joker's hitman, Batman disables their van. Stupid, ignorant amateurs, Batman says as he tries to drag them free of the flaming van. He could smell gasoline, so he encouraged Robin to hurry with taking them out of the non-reinforced van. Maybe his version of taking them out is a bit different. See, one of the punks pops his head out, but shortly after his head is stomped on by Jason. And the issue even highlighted how the punk's blood steamed and bubbled on the hood. Looks like a pretty red hood, if you ask me. The issue goes on to show how Batman feels responsible for the methods in which Robin takes down these bad guys. Batman even saying, "This is what I trained him to be, a ruthless killer." And this is when Jason decides to handle some Joker business on his own. Number 6, Philippe Garzona's death. In Batman issue 424, The Diplomat's Son, we see Robin take matters into his own hands. Ranked number 28 in Wizard magazine's list of 100 best single-issue comics since you were born, The Diplomat's Son has one of the darkest title page illustrations I've seen. So we see a not-so-smiley Robin pushing somebody off of a building. And judging by the size of the cars down below, it's not the kind of push we saw from The Dark Knight. Now, the victim was a not so great guy by any standards at all. The victim being Philippe Garzona. See, after avoiding a sexual assault and battery charge, a lot of readers actually enjoyed Philippe's fate, considering how bad this guy is. After Philippe fell to his death from his penthouse suite, Batman swoops in and asks the pressing questions. Did he fall, or was he pushed? And Robin simply replied with, I guess I spooked him. He slipped. And Batman is left standing there thinking about what had just taken place and why. And number 5, Earth 51's Joker. Now, halfway through this list, we're thinking maybe he's a bit of a troubled soul. Well, in the final Crisis event, we see one of the craziest things ever. On Earth 51, that is. Jason Todd was sent to find Ray Palmer across the multiverse, and during his travels, he met the Batman from that Earth 51, who at this point was a bit different than our classic Caped Crusader. See, Earth 51's Batman was this badass murderer after Jason Todd's death. So after he was given a fancy new red suit, that Batman was murdered by the Joker and other multiverse characters. So our Jason Todd decided to kill Joker by using a rock to his head. Holy sh**. I mean, in all fairness, he was laughing at that Batman's dead body, so kind of warranted? I don't know. It's a rock. Number 4, Jason and Grayson. Following Infinite Crisis, DC released a comic in 2006 titled 1 Year Later, which, as you would guess, shows where our heroes and villains are exactly a year afterwards. So Dick Grayson moves to New York, and then he sees that Nightwing is there. And he's taking care of criminals. Like, taking care of them, you know? With a little side of death in there, just sprinkled in, you know, just some punches and some death. The suited up Dick Grayson is then approached by the fake Nightwing, who turns out to be none other than our Red Hood, Jason Todd. So of course they scrap it out, and Dick Grayson is knocked off a building, with Jason Todd of course preaching how much more the city of New York liked his take on the Nightwing mantle. The pair end up fighting again for the second time, and Jason Todd wins again. The two ends up teaming together, but seeing Red Hood steal Nightwing's mantle and kick some serious ass, that's one for the books. Number 3, he stole some tires. Jason Todd was given a darker origin after the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline. This time we see him introduced to Batman as a criminal, which does make a lot of sense considering the horror stories I just told you about. So Batman catches him while he was stealing tires. Doesn't sound too bad. I mean, now's the time for winter tires to be put on anyways. No, these tires belong to the Batmobile. Yikes. So Batman wasn't too upset. In fact, he was kind of impressed. See, the Batmobile isn't an easy target. I mean, there are security systems in place to avoid a situation like being left with no tires at the beginning of a mission, which would be hilarious. This got the attention of Batman, unfortunately. Who knows, if Batman didn't catch him, maybe he would have turned out differently. Maybe he would have had a different upbringing. Just like as a petty thief rather than, you know, Red Hood. That would be a great alternate issue though. Batman's like, I'm on my way, and then he just sees this car with no tires. He's like, okay, I'll be there in like 42 minutes. Damn it! Number 2, Robin vs. Robin. Imagine getting dumped and your significant other dates somebody that's just like you but better in all the right ways. Isn't that brutal? And to make matters worse, imagine if you saw them and they were wearing your clothes. Like, what if this dude had on your hoodie? That's crazy. The disrespect. So after Jason Todd's return, he of course was not a fan of the new Robin, Tim Drake. And to show who the real Robin is, Jason decides to beat the hell out of Tim Drake. He even took down the other Titans in the process. Even though Tim may be the better detective and better trained than Jason, anger really is something else. And finally at number 1, the Poison Prison Blues. So while Tim Drake held the mantle of the Caped Crusader, Jason Todd was being held in Arkham Asylum. In Batman's words, it was for his own protection. So after explaining to Batman that he had passed all the tests numerous times, the psychological tests, he was transferred to a regular prison in Gotham. Now at this point, there's tons of criminals that want a piece of Jason Todd. Jason decides he's had enough of the incoming threats and poisons the cafeteria, killing 82 and sickening about 100 more. That's one way to take out all of your haters. Jeez, it kind of reminds me of that scene from Watchmen with Rorschach. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have the Power Broker. John Walker looked up to his older brother Michael quite a bit, especially after he sacrificed his life serving during the Vietnam War. So John decided to follow in his brother's footsteps, and he went into the military service as well. but that still wasn't enough. John felt like he still wasn't the hero that he needed to be. He kept comparing himself to Michael, and what exactly is a hero without a few super abilities on the side, am I right? So he paid a visit to the Power Broker. The Power Broker is being teased throughout Falcon and Winter Soldier right now, but what do? Who are they? Well, they trade their knowledge of technology for high-paying customers who want to undergo this risky process to basically become a superhero. It's like a gamble to get some powers. Half the time, the clients wouldn't even survive. See, it's not that easy to become a superhero. But it worked for John Walker. Unfortunately, it enhanced his strength a hefty amount. So now we have the motivation, we have the superpowers. So what's the next step? And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be great. You guys are super helpful. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's fly right back into this list. Number 9, he became Super Patriot. Before becoming Captain America, John Walker tried the hero gig, just in another fashion. First, he was the Super Patriot. He made a spectacular first appearance in Captain America 323, and John Walker was standing up for America and its true ideals. Nice. He even chose July 4th to make his grand entrance. What a patriot. What a super patriot. So Cap walks by as this is happening when he's making his big debut, and he sees a big poster with his face on it with a big red X through the center. It's kind of like America's Got Talent. And then on the other side, we see the super patriot with a big yes on his side. Okay, that's odd. So now he's starting to publicly shame Captain America in front of his supporters. He's trying to win over the crowd. And if a Cool America monologue wasn't enough to do it, he had his own buck, the Bold Urban Commandos. There were 3 of them, and they staged attacks to make John Walker look better. But you could only look so good until number 8. He fought Captain America. So where John and his 3 Bold Urban Commandos staged another attack, Captain America arrived to save the day. And then readers get treated to a star-spangled battle. And John puts up a pretty good fight as well. He can actually go toe-to-toe with Captain America. Thanks, Power Broker. It worked. They end up battling it out for 27 minutes straight. 27 minutes. That's like a full TV episode of just getting punched in the face. That's terrible. But Super Patriot was never able to really land a blow on Cap, and Cap was never able to keep Super Patriot down. So they're just standing there out of breath for 27 minutes like, now what? So Super Patriot leaves before doing the worst thing ever in all of this. He calls Steve a loser, and then he runs away.
Number 7, Black Magic. Boggles my mind that given the track record of black magic users, people still seem to try and go that route, thinking it will be different for them. Wanda herself has a sticky history with black magic, possession, and evil dark deities, like Chthon for example. Another example would present itself in Avengers number 75 in 1970. After losing her powers, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and the mutant Toad go to seek out a way for her to gain them back. They stumble upon a dark magic book, and super intelligently give it a read. A spell in this book allowed an extra-dimensional being by the name of Archon the Magnificent, Lord of Warlords, to teleport to Earth and kidnap her to be his bride. Oh, and he also was going to use nuclear boom booms to try and attack the world. The Avengers saved her and the world, but this led directly to Wanda's run-in with Chthon. Again, why do people decide to use black magic at all? I don't get it. Number 6, Morality Switch. Sometimes when Marvel wants to incorporate a cool idea for a comic series, they gotta come up with some awesome and elaborate ways to make it happen. It's half the fun of comics. A merging of Red Skull and the incredibly powerful Onslaught unleashed a huge Avengers and X-Men level threat called Red Onslaught on Genosha. Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom combined forces to perform a spell that would switch the axis of morality inside Red Onslaught's mind to make him good and end the conflict. Honestly, a pretty genius idea. Only things went a little whack, and instead of switching the morality of just Red Onslaught, she switched the moralities of every single person on Genosha at the time. So everyone. Every villain became a good guy and every hero became bad. It was honestly pretty cool, but yet another time Wanda messed up a spell and affected everyone. Number 5, Namor and Atlantis. As a member of the Avengers, when the very serious and long-awaited Avengers vs. X-Men event took place, Wanda remained on the side of her crime-fighting friends. A main cause of this event was the return of the Phoenix Force, which was unintentionally split among 5 members of the X-Men. The Phoenix 5 went after Scarlet Witch, which is fair, considering the crazy things she has done to cause the mutant community a whole heck of a lot of grief in the past. After one of the Phoenix hosts, Namor the Submariner, lost in his fight to Scarlet Witch, he went and attacked Wakanda. He was so close to winning too. Too bad Wanda showed up yet again and used her powers to completely wreck him, saying, "Go away," and bursting him into shards like he was a delicate piece of china. She then subdued the whole of Atlantis too. Yeah, she's pretty scary. Number 4. Magically made her children. Now before you get upset, giving birth is not evil at all. I mean, the kids could be a pain in your backside, and if they're the type to throw tantrums, then I mean it's everyone's problem at that point, but overall, they're a miracle. Problems arise though when 1. You have children against your partner's wishes, 2. They aren't actually real, and most importantly, number 3, you use black magic to make them. Yes, you see, when Scarlet Witch became an Avenger and fell in love with the android Vision, they got married, and even though he was against it, Wanda used her magical abilities with some manipulation from Mephisto to make herself pregnant. Something an android is obviously incapable of. The magic pregnancy gave birth to twins, who were then taken and absorbed by Mephisto. Eventually, the real essence of these twins transferred to become 2 real heroes, Speed and Wiccan, who are both very, very powerful heroes currently. Number 3. Hawkeye and Ant-Man. As we know at this point, the Avengers have had to tackle the Scarlet Witch on multiple occasions, but she remained a member and a loyal one at that. After Wanda had gained a powerful new chaos magic from Chthon, she was a little bit more unstable than before. And after the children she had lost and forgotten about, an unintentional remark by fellow Avenger the Wasp mentioning her kids drove her over the edge. And her chaos magic was unleashed, and she went bananas on the Avengers, really giving it to them. This directly led to the de-lifing of the now Wanda-crazed Vision by She-Hulk, an illusion of a Kree invasion, a fake team of Avengers to protect Wanda, and not to mention the end of the line for both Hawkeye and Ant-Man. This is one of those incidents that led directly to the House of M event. Number 2. Took out her entire family. Remember when Scarlet Witch reversed the moralities of pretty much everyone? Well, it wasn't the only bad thing that came out of that moment from our favorite unstable magic user. After the moralities had been switched, Wanda wanted revenge on Dr. Doom for all the things he's done to her in the past, like when he manipulated her after she lost her memory into being his bride for his own power-hungry wants and desires. Understandable stuff like that. Her idea as more of a villain was to just go to Latveria and stop him breathing. Magneto and Quicksilver, her father and brother, did not want her to go down this path and tried to stop her. But being the dangerously unstable person she already is, she angrily and impulsively cast a spell that would end the life of anyone related to her by blood. Quicksilver dropped on the spot, instantly felled, but Magneto, to Wanda's surprise, remained. And that's how she and a lot of us found out Magneto is not actually Wanda's father. Oh, also she ended her brother's life, so yeah, that's kind of extremely evil. And coming in at number 1, it's M-Day. Alright, the other big one. So we know that in the House of M story, Scarlet Witch altered reality in some rather big ways, but it wasn't as if everything before this didn't happen, just no one could remember it. One mutant by the name of Layla Miller, for example, could remember the reality before, and she used her powers to restore the memories of a bunch of other heroes. Another mutant, who you might know of by the name of Wolverine, could sense that something was wrong with this reality. He and a few other heroes, including a resurrected Hawkeye, formed up into a team to put things back to normal. Seeing as Magneto was now the ruler of the world, it made sense to them that he was responsible, and they went to attack. During the scuffle, Magneto had his memories returned to him by Layla, and Wanda convinced him it was Quicksilver who urged her to do the whole reality warping thing. Angrily confronting Quicksilver, who admitted that he would have let Wanda perish, Magneto made him perish. Wanda, thoroughly angry and unstable yet again, revived her brother, yelled at her non-father, denounced Xavier, and in 3 words, no more mutants, she reverted reality and depowered 90% of the entire mutant population, resulting in a huge loss of life. All this on the day forever known as M-Day. What a great time.
Number 9. Hard feelings. This next one isn't exactly a bad deed, but it's too weird of a Justice League story to not include, so I'm gonna throw it in at number 9. One I'd rather not have in my brain all day, so let's just get it out of the way. So now we go to World's Finest Comics issue 289. So Batman and Superman decide to catch up on some bro time, you know, take a break from beating up bad guys, just have a heart-to-heart, see what's going on in here. Now this heart-to-heart is the start of a wild adventure. Now the issue is titled The Cruel Way of Dying, and the dialogue itself is really good stuff actually. It highlights the mental health struggles that superheroes go through, you know, not being able to save everybody. It's meaningful, it's powerful dialogue, but what takes this issue to new heights, well rather new lows, is when Superman and Batman are interrupted by a meteorite crashing, and out of the meteorite emerges the crew. Now the crew, not what you imagine in your head off the bat. I can tell you that because the crew, they're a bunch of space worms and they're attracted to sadness. That's how they found the two, because they were talking about super sad stuff and they're like, yes, sad, this way, let's go, let's head it. Their super depression was literally glowing. So these aliens need emotion in order to pass away. See what happens when you try and feel nice things, Justice League? Way to go, now we're all crying. I'm definitely crying. They're crying, they're dead. Space worms are coming for me because I'm crying now. What a vicious circle. Number 8, Lockdown Beatdown. Kingdom Come is a 4-issue miniseries that comes from Mark Waid and Alex Ross. It's an Elseworlds imprint. Now, in this alternate reality, 20 years into the future, our heroes have gotten a little older, so they settled into the retirement life. Now, these new anti-heroes stepped up, and new vigilantes, of course, soon followed. Some of them were children of the previous superheroes, so it goes kind of deep. See, Parasite breaks open a hero named Captain Atom, and you already know by his name how that's going to turn out if something like that were to explode. Boom! There goes Kansas, gone. No, literally, Kansas was gone. It was now just this wasteland. So this is when the Justice League comes in to save the day, or I guess turn the wasteland into a super prison too. That as well. So when you throw supervillains and superheroes into this alien tech super prison, there's gonna be a few fistfights, that's for sure. Number 7, more secrets. Marriage is a big deal, as we kind of just mentioned. I mean, maybe in comic books they happen way more often than they should. So many characters get divorced every other day, I swear. Like, divorce lawyers must make millions of dollars in the comics. Holy shit. But the whole point of a proper marriage is to have everything out there on the table, right? You have to know everything about your significant other. No secrets. I mean, sure, if you're Spider-Man, you have to keep some things to yourself, like the fact that you're Spider-Man. Because maybe your friends will go and say something and then the Green Goblin will hear and then he'll blow up your house or something, or toss your aunt out of a window. I get it. But MJ already knew about Peter Parker being Spider-Man. Of course she did. So right after he had resumed taking on the mantle of the Webhead again, he failed to fill in MJ. Yeah, he told her he'd quit and then he didn't tell her that he was, you know, not quitting anymore. Like, dude, she already knew before. Stop making up lies. What are you, Walter White? It's very obvious you're up to something. Everybody's onto it. Number 6, blackmail for a date. So that One More Day storyline that has been mentioned before in our channel that I'll talk about a little bit more at the end of this list is a pretty pivotal moment in Spider-Man comics. So after this deal had taken place, Spider-Man was now single and ready to mingle. So in Miss Marvel issue 34, we see a new Peter bump into Miss Marvel. And she's in the middle of this sketchy and totally unplanned mission, as Peter puts it, with the CIA. And she can't use her powers, and she's currently on the run from Norman Osborn, who turned S.H.I.E.L.D. into Hammer at this point. It's wild. So bumping into Peter was pretty ideal at this point. He webbed her to safety, all the while they bickered at each other trying to figure out what's going on, what they're up to, what their real intentions are. And then Carol thanks him with a super knee, bam, right between the legs, and then explains to Peter that she needs his help, which is a good order. That's how you do things, in that order. I need help. Can you drive me to the airport? If I do this, says Pete, then I want a date with you, which we see come to fruition 13 issues later. So when Carol responded surprised, he even acknowledged that he didn't realize he was gonna say that until it came out. Cool, maybe it just slipped out. But then once she leaves and agrees to it, he's like, yo, I think I just got a date, score. Come on, Pete. A lot of come on Pete's in this, eh? A lot of just what are you doing, dude? Number 5, truce? Question mark? So at some point, it's fair to make a truce, okay? Maybe the conflicts just don't have realistic expectations, and then both parties are like, you know what, this has gone on way too long, let's just call it, no hard feelings. Bam. Like Spider-Man 3, when Pete and Harry teamed up to save the day against Venom and Sandman. That was a great moment. Moviegoers were thrilled to see the end of Bad Boy James Franco and Bad Boy Tobey Maguire. Like, just stop dancing and snapping at people. Just fight. I don't know. But in the comics, he made a pretty questionable truce with Venom. And it all happens in the Amazing Spider-Man 375. Spider-Man's parents get kidnapped by Venom. So he's like, no problem. I'll just roll up with your ex-wife. What's up? Let's make a deal. What do you got? So Spider-Man saved her life, so in return, a truce was to be made. I mean, sure, this was the kickoff to Venom becoming an anti-hero, and then he can have his own run, but also, it's Venom, you know?
Christineth, are you stupid or are you deaf?
Number 4, the fairy incident. Spider-Man Homecoming. Okay, so after intimidating Aaron Davis with his cool, deep voice, Spider-Man figured out the next move for the arms dealers. So Pete decides to take matters into his own hands and prove that he's worthy of being a suitable Avenger. See, this was right after Tony recruited him to help take down Team Cap in Civil War. So he was warm, he got a taste of the action, and now he wants to do more. That's fair, that's why we love Spider-Man. So the Staten Island Ferry was the next location for the Vulture's arms deal to go down. Let's do it, we got the intel, we're rolling in. So he says some quips, webs a few bad guys up, but the Vulture's Chitauri weapon was just too much for Peter to handle, resulting in the ferry to split in half. Right down the middle too, not even like Titanic. So in a last attempt to keep the civilians safe, he tries to hold on to both sides, which is a sick moment. It's kind of like a homage to other Spider-Man moments. It's great, but people are in danger. People are about to drown. There's like cars that are sinking. It's bad. And thankfully, with Iron Man's surprise arrival, the passengers were saved. Tony was pissed though. He had this whole setup. There was an inside operation, and then Spidey came in and blew it. And he didn't even tell Tony about what he was doing to make matters all the worse, which resulted in Tony taking back the Spider-Man suit. It's always the worst part, right after a breakup. You're like, fine, here's your nice sweater. God, I'm so cold now. Number 3, evil assassin Spider-Man. We go now to Earth 8351, where Spider-Man and Wolverine are training together in Alaska. Nice and cold. So they're trying to go rogue, so they're working on becoming stronger, and they're training, they're having a good time. Now, this Peter Parker, he's a bit more rough around the edges. Even his famous catchphrase is now slightly different. See, in this universe, it is, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which I like more. It's honest. It's definitely better. Doesn't roll off the tongue, but it's a step in the right direction. And it makes sense why he's going rogue. He's truly trying to protect his friends and family, and saying those few extra words at the end just reaffirms his only goal. So when they're attacked, Spider-Man tells Wolverine just to keep hitting people while he deals with a bad guy wielding not one, but 2 swords. So Spider-Man tries webbing him up, and the swords don't allow that. And Spider-Man even gets laughed at for attempting to do this. And Spider-Man says, you're right, that's not gonna work. Bam, shoots him in the face. Huh? They held off long enough until S.H.I.E.L.D. arrived. I mean, sure, this Spider-Man is a different version, but it's still Spider-Man, right? Like, regardless of the title on the front page, this is a moment most fans remembered long after the pages were closed. He like did a cool peace sign too, and then the bullets popped out of his wrist. It was cool. He's like, hey, smell this, bam. Smell this, why the fuck would he say that? Number 2, hit Mary Jane. Spectacular Spider-Man issue 226, we see Ben Reilly and Peter Parker, and the tension is high. They're trying to prove who the real Spider-Man is. It's during all the clone stuff. And they reach a conclusion that Ben Reilly is in fact the real Spider-Man. He is the real father. He is the father. Peter doesn't respond to this well at all. He's upset, obviously. He's watching his entire life basically get stolen in front of him. And then MJ tries to get in the middle, and cool everything down, and Peter instinctively just brushes her off, yelling to leave him alone. Now, you can't really brush somebody off of you when you can lift, I don't know, a bus. He's strong, he's really strong. So him just doing that in a matter of rage, she went flying. And to make matters somehow worse, she was pregnant. Yeah, she was pregnant. And he quickly knew he had messed up, saying, oh God, what have I done? What kind of man am I? I'll tell you what kind of man you are, Spider-Man. You're a guy who gets on a lot of lists of people getting in trouble. That's what you are. Kidding, you're a gem. Stop hitting people. And finally, number 1, the deal with the devil. I mentioned this earlier, now it's time to get into it. Look, sometimes Peter will try and do the right thing. Well, most of the time he'll do the right thing. But then life just gets even harder for him after that. And then he's presented with a new issue to face, and it's like an over and over again thing. It's just a nightmare. And then in 2007, starting with the Amazing Spider-Man issue 544, the storyline One More Day, it's exactly what might happen if you revealed your identity to the public. Following in the footsteps of Tony Stark in the Civil War II storyline, where Peter revealed his true identity in order to support the Superhero Registration Act. So giving out your last name to supervillains, cool, great idea, awesome, nothing bad's gonna happen at all. This of course resulted in Aunt May getting shot, and in order to save her life, he must make a deal with the devil, literally Mephisto. And in doing so, the world will also forget about Peter's true identity. Not a bad deal. The only catch is that Mephisto takes away the marriage of Peter and Mary Jane. And I don't mean a quickie divorce and he's like, hey, sign here, poof. No, I mean it never happened. The relationship is gone, and at the turn of a page, the marriage was just no more. All those memories, all those moments, gone just like that. Kicking off the list at number 10, put on a show. Okay, Peter's life is pretty balanced. I mean, he takes selfies for the Daily Bugle, gets a little bit of cash, gets thrown off a building, has to fight a giant lizard, you name it. With Peter's life, his superhero and work go hand in hand. So in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 4, released back in 1963, we see Peter and he had just finished laying out Sandman, but he forgot to snag a couple of photos of the action. He didn't take any selfies, which is the worst. It's like when you blow candles out on your cake and then your mom's like, nope, you blinked, light them up again. Gotta keep trying this, it's for the scrapbook, let's go. Then you're like, I'm tired. So Peter grabs sand, like just sand off the ground, tosses it up in the air, and then punches through the sand. He's like, yeah, people are gonna buy this, it's the Sandman. And then people do buy it. What a liar. He comes back in all cool, out of breath, like, good people, you can breathe easy. Meanwhile, his Instagram is just popping off with likes. God, what a liar. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta get clout. You gotta get that super clout. And before we list off some more of Peter's dark days, if you guys could go ahead and toss us a thumbs up, because it really helps us out here at the studio. If we get enough likes, they won't kill me. Number 9, giving away Edith. Following the events of Avengers Endgame, aka the Snappening, we see Peter Parker trying to move on in a very new world, while mourning the loss of a co-worker and father figure that is Tony Stark. He wants to just live a normal life. He wants to go away on a trip with his friends and not have any moons hucked at him from any Titans. So after trying to ghost Nick Fury in the process, he's handed down Edith, Tony's sweet AI glasses. After a mix-up that almost had his classmate executed by one of Tony's drones, he decides that the handsome, caped, random Jake Gyllenhaal that just came out of nowhere as Mysterio is a safe bet for the tech. I mean, he looks great in the glasses, but like, it's Jake Gyllenhaal, he's gonna look great in anything. But come on, Peter, you think after toying with Stark's suit years before that maybe it's a little bit too much responsibility? I'll get into that later. Number 8, the Betty Brant affair.
Hey, Betty.
So Betty is a staff member at the Daily Bugle. She's been played by Elizabeth Banks in the Tobey Maguire trilogy, and Angourie Rice plays a younger version of her in the new MCU Tom Holland version. Believe it or not though, Betty was actually the first woman that Peter was attracted to when he first started selling photos to the Daily Bugle. So they dated for a bit, but ultimately it didn't work out. No biggie, it happens. Cut to years down the road, Peter's marriage proposal didn't work out too well. She said no, and Betty's marriage to Ned at this point was also not working out. She was having a bit of a rough patch. So she went to Peter for some comfort, and then the obvious happened. She's still married, Pete. Don't do it.
Your shots are so good.
I'd love to shoot you sometime.
Peter Parker. Peter.
Number 7, worst boyfriend ever. I wish I could say this was a one-time instance, but this is one of the worst, most consistent things that we've seen from Peter Parker throughout all of his relationships. He's not only super awkward around the ladies, but also has a tendency to behave badly with his romantic partners as well. For one, Peter very rarely lets people in on his secret of being Spider-Man, which causes a lot of problems early on in relationships that usually end up causing a breakup before things get super serious. And you might be thinking to yourself, but wait a minute, Amanda, hasn't Peter Parker told Mary Jane before that he's Spider-Man? Yes, but she also apparently knew from like day one that he was Spider-Man, so I don't know if that even counts because she knew the whole time. But beyond that, he also says things and does kind of things that are just in general awful. He snapped at his partners, lied to them, gotten them into all kinds of danger, blamed them for things that weren't their fault, and even at times physically hit them. Like when Mary Jane tried to break up a fight between Peter Parker and his clone Ben Reilly, and in a mindless rage, he slammed her back, causing her to go flying into a wall. Also, Spider-Man is super strong, so even if he like flicked Mary Jane, I imagine that would be terribly painful. Oh, and she was also pregnant at the time with their child, which just makes it even worse.
Number 6, He almost robbed a jewelry store. Okay, I know this isn't supposed to be top 10 things Spider-Man almost did, but I have to mention another really weird out of character Spider-Man moment. In Amazing Spider-Man number 87, Spidey has been suffering from an illness that he determines to be the radioactivity in his blood slowly killing him. He's been feeling delirious for a while and having a hard time using his powers properly, and he's swinging around the city, monologuing, wondering what it means for his future. Suddenly, he remembers it's Gwen Stacy's birthday, classic Peter, and he doesn't have a gift. So in a bizarre moment, we see Spider-Man randomly decide to break into a jewelry store and he steals a necklace for her. He realizes what he's doing before it's too late and he kind of like puts it back, but he's already caused property damage and like, you know, thank God they don't have cameras because Jameson would just have a field day with that. The whole thing is just a really weird moment. Spider-Man starting to wonder if he's losing his mind. And the whole thing was really surprising to me, and he almost went through with it.
Number 5, killed MJ again. Yeah, for someone who claims to love her so much, Peter is not very good at treating MJ well. This one comes to us from another alternate reality though, so we do have to, you know, asterisk and add that in there, little editor note. Because of course, Peter would never kill Mary Jane in the main continuity, or more, he just hasn't done so yet. In the reality of Spider-Man Reign, we're taken to a potential future reality where Peter killed Mary Jane simply by loving her. Their being intimate, at least that's what's implied, caused Mary Jane to be exposed to Peter's radioactivity at a level where she ended up getting cancer and dying. His radioactive fluids. Yeah, that's pretty intense. In typical Peter fashion, this becomes one of his greatest regrets, giving MJ cancer, and only serves to basically drive him insane and turn him senile, which really doesn't help anyone and makes for a pretty crazy story when he returns as a bizarre and depressed version of Old Man Spider-Man. Old Man Spider-Man is super depressing.
Number 4. Worked for the Jackal. The whole clone saga was definitely one of Spidey's lowest points, especially just the way that they totally messed with Peter's character throughout the whole thing. He was calling himself the Spider and just acting generally unpleasant, but when he found out that he wasn't the real Peter Parker but a clone, he really didn't receive that news very well. The Jackal somehow ends up convincing Pete to work with him, and somehow Peter buys it, even though it means working against his friend Ben Reilly. Peter eventually does come to his senses, but man, how could he have ever been convinced to work with a supervillain in the first place? You know, every time I look back on this era, I remember why people hate it so much. Both versions of Spider-Man are pretty decent, but the way that they're pitted against one another as if there can only be one and everything, the whole thing just felt kind of forced.
Number 3 was too apathetic. Spider-Man's apathy is something that haunts him to this day and makes him pretty much the one to blame for his Uncle Ben's death. Well, I mean, I personally think Peter is much too hard on himself here, and that being that harsh only leads to more disasters later down the road that his intense sense of responsibility has a hand in causing, but I digress. Peter for sure thinks this is the worst thing he has ever done, allowing the man who would go on to kill his uncle to get past him. At the time when the guard who pursued the criminal asked for help, Peter simply didn't see the point in aiding. That wasn't his job, he thought. He wasn't a hero. However, afterward he learned that with great power comes great responsibility, a lesson that has haunted him and continues to both haunt and inspire him to this day.
Number 2. He killed Charlemagne. In the one-shot Spider-Man vs. Wolverine from 1987, we get to witness an epic showdown between these two fan favorites. Peter winds up in Germany investigating a mysterious arms dealer. Charlemagne turns out to be an old associate of Wolverine's, and she's got all kinds of people after her. They track her to East Berlin, where Wolverine plans to kill her, sparing her from being tortured by the KGB. Spider-Man isn't really cool with the whole killing her part of the plan, so the two of them have a bit of a fight about it. However, after a helicopter breaks up the fight for a second, Peter's Spidey sense kicks in, and thinking that Wolverine is behind him, he turns around and delivers a full-powered punch, instantly killing Charlemagne. It's implied that she probably intended for this to happen as she was wanting to die and stuff, but still, if you had told me that Spider-Man once punched a woman with no superpowers and killed her in one hit, I'd be a little skeptical. But it really happened.
Number 1, probably killed Gwen Stacy. Once again, Peter is causing harm to those he loves. What's more, this whole moment where he attempted to save Gwen and we hear her neck snap is made even worse for Peter in terms of his own guilt over the situation by the fact that he never really knows if it was him or if it was Green Goblin who is to blame for her death. Was she dead before he grabbed her, or did she die when his webbing latched on to save her, breaking her neck? We still don't really know for sure, although I think Green Goblin claims that she died while she was falling. He's like, a fall like that, she died before she hits the ground. And I'm like, wait, is that how falling works? It's not. Anyways. I mean, either way, Peter Parker is kind of to blame here, as Green Goblin has a tendency to target those that Spider-Man loves. So once again, just loving Gwen was in a way a terrible thing for him to do to her.
Almost let a little girl die in surgery. In Amazing Spider-Man number 700, Doc Ock switches minds with Spider-Man. Sort of. Doc Ock, now in Spider-Man's body, is exposed to all of Peter's memories and experiences, and it definitely has an effect. He decides to become a superhero, calling himself the Superior Spider-Man. However, in the first issue of Superior Spider-Man, it's revealed that a portion of Peter is still residing inside of the body, and it has some control over Doc Ock's actions. So later in Superior Spider-Man number 8, the Superior Spidey finds a device that he can use to get rid of the last bits of Peter Parker that remain in his brain. However, in order to gain access to this device, he first has to perform surgery on a little girl. So this leads to a scene where Ghost Spider-Man is like in the background, basically trying to prevent Doc Ock from doing the surgery, knowing that Doc is going to finish off Peter Parker after he's successful. However, Peter does eventually relent and Doc succeeds in his surgery, but for a moment there, it kind of seemed like Pete was ready to let a little girl die so that he could live. Not exactly Spidey's finest hour.
Number 9. Killed MJ. So Peter's track record when it comes to loved ones isn't as bad as someone like Daredevil, but hey, it isn't great either. In alternate universes especially, Spider-Man has caused a lot of harm to those that he's loved, and I mean a lot. And even in the main continuity, his track record isn't so great. In the Marvel Zombies universe, Spider-Man was transformed into a zombie, and as this happened, felt the uncontrollable urge taken over him. He was like, I'm so hungry, I gotta eat people. He tried to tell his loved ones to get away from him, but it was too late, and he ended up not only killing, but full on eating both Mary Jane and his Aunt May. Of course, can we really blame Peter for this one? Not so much. He was a zombie and he wasn't really in control here. But knowing Peter, you can bet he likely reminisced and blamed himself continuously for this for days on end, even while he was a zombie. Because, you know, Peter just loves to blame himself for everything. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick little reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying it. It really helps us out at the channel, and thank you if you've already done it. Number 8. Lied about her age. In one continuity, Lois was raised to be tough as nails by her military father, who had wanted sons but ended up with daughters, Lois and her younger sister Lucy. Already instilled with a hard-working ethic when she was just 15, Lois attempted to apply for a job at the Daily Planet, while her father was stationed in Metropolis, where her family was also temporarily living. She lied in an attempt to get hired, claiming to be 19. Lucy rats her out, but Lois ends up securing the job anyways, even though she is too young to be employed there. She's only 15, when she manages to sneak into Lex Luthor's building and steal some files. Also, the rest of that issue is super weird. When Lex catches her, it's weird. I think he spanks her. I think that's like her punishment. He's like, I'm gonna spank you, that'll teach you, young Lois Lane. And then he's like, I hope I meet her in 10 years. And I'm like, that's creepy, Lex. Don't stop that. Stop it. Number 7. Impersonated an actress. In the first issue of Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, Lois impersonated the world-famous French actress Lois Lane. She did so to get a big scoop on an ambassador who refused to meet with the press. Back in her early days, Lois was always pulling crazy stunts like this, but this time her act was so convincing and deemed so deceitful by Superman that when he found out about it, he intervened to get back at Lois. Of course, Superman was also kind of being a huge jerk in this issue, as he usually is in this comic, but yeah, both Lois and Superman are they're really always awful to one another at times in this series, as well as everyone around them. Also, Lois does a terrible French accent to impersonate LaFlamme, effectively mocking her while impersonating her. How rude. Like, she even acknowledges that it's a bad accent. She's like, I'm gonna do this terrible French accent to impersonate a real French person. That's so insulting. Number 6. Got between Robin and Batman. In an imaginary story, Lois Lane ends up dating Bruce Wayne, falling in love with him, and marrying him. Superman nor Clark Kent refuses to get in between them as he feels that marrying Lois would actually put her in too much danger. So he's like, I guess I'll just let this happen, I guess I'm fine with it. Super not fine with it. Which is the same excuse actually that Superman feeds Lois for years in the comics while she remains weirdly obsessed with him and marriage. She's like, marry me, and he's like, it'll be too dangerous, and she's like, okay, but you always say that. Give me a better excuse. No, he's only got one excuse. He doesn't want to marry you, Lois, get over it. This is obviously not the Lois we know today, who is a hard-hitting reporter and a more intellectual, career-focused woman. After Lois marries Bruce in the story, she finds out he's Batman, and subsequently, while she and Batman appear to be living happily ever after, isolates Batman's greatest ally, Robin. Her closeness with Bruce causes him to kind of give Robin the cold shoulder, and when the pair have their first child, it's also made apparent to Robin that Batman seeks to have his natural-born son become the heir to the Batman mantle, as opposed to his pal Robin. Harsh. Poor Robin. He's like, but I thought I was like your first son. Batman's like, you're not really my son though. You're just a kid that lives with me. Don't get too attached. Number 5. Poses as a man's dead wife. This story, in all, was pretty awful, but also Lois did help in a weird way. First of all, Lois is sent on a journalist job by Perry White to go undercover to get the scoop on a famous horror film star, Carlos Floyd, and his new wife, Edna Van Cleve III. Lois and Clark are both sent to pose as a maid and a butler, respectively, on Skull Island, where the new couple have just moved. Also, just all of these stories where they're like, we're just gonna pretend to be someone to like infiltrate and get a story because people don't want to talk to us. I'm like, this is bad journalism. Like, I don't think you're allowed to entrap people like this. However, Lois starts to suspect that Floyd may have killed his new bride while she is there, but is making it appear as though she is still healthy and alive for some reason. She dresses up as his dead bride in order to spook him and hopefully prompt him to confess his guilt. However, it turns out that Floyd actually isn't the guilty party. It was Sydney Willis, Edna's lawyer, who was to blame. In fact, Floyd had been making her appear alive in an attempt to catch the true culprit. So he was trying to actually do that with his whole thing. Fortunately, Lois also aids in this, and Willis is apprehended and confesses, but this was a pretty risky move on Lois's part. Like, she was just like, I'm pretty sure he did it, so I'm gonna traumatize this man. And I'm sure it was somewhat traumatizing for Floyd to see her impersonating his wife in the photo that he captured of her until all of this was revealed. And he found out that his wife, wasn't like a ghost trying to haunt him. Be disturbing. Number 4. Ruined a space rocket launch. This is a wow one. I can't believe this happened. As I said earlier, Lois always is so determined to get that scoop. She'll just do about anything. When it comes to reporting on a space rocket, that means faking a fainting spell in order to find a way inside it prior to the launch. No one was allowed inside the rocket, but when she fainted, apparently this was the only place she could be taken to rest. Would like to question if this makes any sense. I'm just imagining that one guy at the launch site just carrying her all the way up the elevator and the flights of stairs to put her in the rocket. Like, that's a long way up you have to go, my friend. Surely there's gotta be like a car or something nearby that they could have put her in. But no, apparently the rocket is the nearest place for her to be safe. Also, you shouldn't even be putting her in there. Whatever, it's fine, it happened. Anyways, once inside, Lois basically stretches out, examining the interior and marveling over how successful and smart of a reporter she is for managing to get inside the restricted area of the inside of the rocket prior to launch. Now, she accidentally hits a little gadget, causing the rocket to fire up before its scheduled launch time, which is actually supposed to be in 2 days. So this is a really early launch. Superman once again uses Lois's mistake as an opportunity to teach her a lesson, which is also pretty awful once more. But Lois also probably cost that space exploration team tons of money. Like, space rocket launches are expensive, girl. What are you doing? Number 3. Tried to kill the Kents. In Blackest Night Superman, Lois Lane of Earth 2 was resurrected as a Black Lantern and was sent to kill the New Earth Kents. She wasn't successful, fortunately, and she wasn't the one pulling the strings behind this master plot, but this probably is one of the darkest things we've ever seen Lois do. In the end, she is one of the Lanterns to join up to take on the JSA. She ends up having to fight Power Girl, who to her was kind of like a daughter, so this is all pretty dark. Number 2. Earth 3. Everything the evil version of Lois Lane from Earth 3 does, is pretty dark. The Earth 3 version of Lois is the villainous hero, Superwoman. She has had multiple affairs and thoroughly enjoys using her lasso of submission to enslave those who oppose her, and even those who don't oppose her. She just likes enslaving people with a lasso. At one point when she is pregnant, she tries to convince both her partners Ultraman and Owlman that they were the father, manipulating them in order to turn them against one another. In reality, the baby wasn't even either of theirs, but was actually from a relationship she had with Alexander Luthor, who was technically the crime syndicate, her League of Villainous Heroes, enemy. Basically, this version of Lois is all about manipulating others in order to satisfy her own selfish desires. Number 1 was racist. Yeah, this story was bad. It comes to us from the issue of Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane 106, which honestly feels like it should be older based on its tone, but it's actually from 1970 if you can believe it. So this story is only 50 years old, and yeah, it's not good. And it also is not aged well at all. Lois is attempting to win a Pulitzer and wants to write about the plights of those living in the Little Africa borough of Metropolis. However, Lois finds no one in Little Africa is willing to talk with her because she is white. So she comes up with a way of getting around that. She asks Superman to use his Kryptonian tech, the Plastimold, to temporarily change the color of her skin, turning her black for the day. Yeah, and it's worse than you think, trust me. One of the worst parts of the story is when Lois asks Superman if he would still marry her if she remained black. Superman does not answer the question but follows it up instead with another question about if she's really asking him that question. An alien, a universal outsider. Is this supposed to be Superman basically saying yes without actually saying it, or is he just trying to avoid the question? Either way, it's not a good look for you, Superman. Lois also responds by calling Superman the right color. Wow, just a million times yikes. Definitely the darkest timeline here. This is like such a bad story.